Chapter 279. In the darkness of the night, a black motorcycle flashed by. On the motorcycle was a red figure. Tim Drake, third-generation Robin. His ambition was to become the best detective in the world. In terms of setting, his skills were slightly inferior to the first generation's Dick Grayson, but his investigative abilities were far better than the first generation's. But in fact, he was definitely not weak. In the comic battle for the cape, Jason Todd had to admit, this kid can fight very well. He has always been very good at grasping the balance between intelligence and strength. Unfortunately, in the end, he still lost to Todd because he fought according to the way Bruce taught him and clung to a set of moral principles. Therefore, in the face of Todd, who had no bottom line, Tim's defeat was reasonable. Seeing that the person who came was such a gentle, courteous, and thrifty young man, Fong Bujua felt a lot more relieved. God, this scene is like a missile attack. Tim stood on the top of the building and looked at the ruins of the factory in front of him. He couldn't help but sigh. Some fire trucks were parked in the area near the scene of the incident, and the firefighters were still busy. The police set up a very long cordon to block the reporters and nearby civilians. Although the scale of this explosion was shocking, the fire and subsequent damage caused by the aftermath were not that great. They had been effectively controlled. Suddenly, Tim saw something. On the top of another building, less than 200 meters away, there was a figure in a purple suit. Looking at the characteristics of this person, there was no doubt that this was the John Doe described by the hostages in the bank incident. 25 seconds, this was the time it took Tim to get close to Fong Bujua. Don't do anything stupid, Tim. When Fong Bujua spoke, he was facing away from Tim, but it was as if he had eyes behind his back. When the man was within a certain distance and was about to make his move, Fong Bujua used the appropriate speed to say that. You're the lunatic who threw dollars on the street. Tim's eyes were full of hostility as he said this. You're also the murderer who killed the 3 police officers. I think your accusation is nonsense unless you have enough evidence to prove that I am related to these matters. Fong Bujua turned around and calmly replied, There are more than 20 testimonies from different witnesses in the police station, and your appearance matches the description in any of the testimonies exactly, Tim said. There are many people who look alike, Tim, Fong Bujua said. You can't convict me just because my appearance matches the description. After I tie you up and take you back to the police station, I think those witnesses will be happy to identify you. Tim replied confidently. Tie him up, bring him back to the station. Interesting. Who gave you the right to arrest me? Fong Bujua laughed. Am I engaged in any criminal activity at the moment? Or did my image appear on the police's wanted list? He shook his head. Tim, a good detective should understand that the law is all about evidence. I know you're a cunning guy. Do you think that after blowing up the bank surveillance room, there won't be any evidence left behind? With some time, the police can... Tim didn't finish his sentence. Fong Bujua cut him off. Then, we will wait for them to recover the surveillance footage and get actual evidence before they come to arrest me. He spread out his hands. Now, I'm just a legal citizen standing on the roof looking at the scenery. Enough. This kind of conversation is meaningless. You and I both know that you are John Doe. Tim shouted. Even if I admit it, so what? Tim, Fong Bujua said earnestly. I can go back with you, but what will happen next? The testimonies of those hostages only prove that I killed the 3 bank robbers. He shrugged. My actions were undoubtedly self-defense. It could even be said that I acted bravely for a just cause, just like what you and the network did. He stretched out a finger and pointed it at Tim like a teacher teaching a student. I don't know how much of the surveillance footage can be restored, but I don't think that you can find any footage of me killing the 3 police officers. In fact, I think that before you restore the footage, I have already been paroled. As for how much the parole fee is, I don't care. Also, whether it's the police officers or the hostages, no one saw me throwing the dollars onto the street with their own eyes. Even if you can find every piece of money scattered on the street, you won't be able to find half of my fingerprints, Fong Bujua said proudly. Not a single police officer saw my face directly. Fong Bujua obviously had everything planned out. Every step that he took at the bank was meaningful. If this case is brought to trial, the only information that the hostages could provide to the police that is detrimental to me is after I killed the 3 bank robbers, I used the gun to force the hostages to put a bag of cash over my head and use plastic locks to tie my hands and feet. He titled his head to the side and smiled. Regarding this, I can explain it this way. When I killed the 3 robbers out of self-defense, I was worried that there might be one of their spies among the people at the scene. To better cooperate with the police, I took control of the situation at the first opportunity and hinted to Inspector Clapton that there might be an accomplice among the hostages, telling him not to let his guard down. Humph! Do you think anyone will believe your nonsense? Tim scoffed. Of course, this is a free country. Tim, the jury is neutral, isn't it? Furthermore, everyone has their own weakness, don't they? Fong Bujua chuckled darkly. As long as I can come up with a plausible explanation, the final result of my trial will be that I will be released due to lack of evidence. Huh. Tim also laughed. Just based on what you said to me earlier, I can't testify against me? Fong Bujua interrupted the man again. Then go ahead and testify. After all, in court, I can deny everything that I said. By then, your testimony will become a lie that you made up to send me to prison based on your subjective reasoning. He suddenly wagged his finger. Tim, what are you doing? You silently turned your body to the side and reached your hand toward your belt. Are you trying to turn on some kind of recording device? Tim could not help but grumble internally when he was seen through by Fong Bujua. You only realized what you were doing after I reminded you. This proves that you're still too naive. Fong Bujua said, if it was Bruce standing here today, when I said the word evidence, I believe he would have started recording already. You, Tim said darkly. Not only do you know my name, you even know Bruce. Ha. Fong Bujua suddenly burst out laughing. He laughed for 10 seconds before he stopped. From how I see it, the identity of Batman has always been a joke. He wears military-grade equipment that costs more than $1 million. He can afford a vehicle that costs more than $80 million. He is Caucasian, between 25 and 45 years old, and 6 feet 2 inches tall. How many people do you think fit these criteria? Even within the entire United States, I can narrow down the list to less than 20 people, much less in this small city of Gotham. Who are you? By then, the way Tim looked at Fong Bujua had changed. He realized that the man before him was not a supervillain who relied on brute force but intelligence. This kind of person was hard to deal with. What do you think, Tim? Tim, Fong Bujua tossed the question back at him. If what you said about visitors from another world is true, my initial speculation is... Tim replied, you're the Joker from another universe. You're not bad, kid. If I were in your position, perhaps I would think the same. Fong Bujua said, but I'm not the Joker. The real Joker will not appear during this period of time because a Gotham City without Batman is too boring for him. Sounds like you know that madman very well, Tim replied. At this point in the conversation, Tim understood that he would not be able to get any real information out of the man before him. So he started to slowly approach Fong Bujua, preparing to make his move. I know you very well too, Tim Drake. Just as he finished, Fong Bujua undid the 2 buttons that were tied together in the middle of his shirt, revealing a bundle of bombs. Tim immediately stopped moving. His heart shook as he said, what are you doing? Are you going to die together with me? Fong Bujua smiled and took out a very small remote control from his shirt pocket. He raised it with one hand and said, who knows? Ha. Then he pressed the button. Bang! A loud explosion announced that the bomb had been detonated. Naturally, it was not the bomb that was tied to Fong Bujua's body, but somewhere else. The moment Fong Bujua pressed the button, Tim was so shocked that his cape shook and he rolled backward. He did not expect the explosion to not happen before him, but somewhere further away. What's going on? Tim regained his balance and took a closer look. Behind Fong Bujua, about 100 meters away, there was another high-rise building. The explosion happened there. After the explosion, there was a large hole in the shape of an arc on the wall of the building. It looked like a smiling face. From Tim's point of view, this burning smile was floating in the sky behind Fong Bujua. It was exactly the same as the smile on this lunatic's face. Even now, Tim, you still don't have enough evidence to send me to prison. Feng Bujue swung his hand and threw the remote control out of the rooftop. You saw me press something when the explosion happened, but that doesn't prove anything. Maybe you can find a broken remote control on the street, but there are no fingerprints on it. He smiled evilly. You see, when everything depends on evidence, it becomes easier for criminals to get away with their crimes. The laws of this country are a joke, Tim. Countless real villains get away with it, but many good people have their whole lives ruined by this system because of a little mistake. What the hell do you want? Tim roared, but he still couldn't go forward. After all, the bomb on Feng Bujue's body had not exploded yet. It's hard for you to understand my purpose. I could try to understand it. Don't bother. I don't intend to tell you. Feng Bujue replied, and then pointed at the explosives on his body. Anyway, what you should realize now is these bombs are not used to scare people. I'm determined not to be caught by you. He paused for a moment and said, Don't talk to me about the law. Behind you is not the law, but justice. Even Batman can't deny that justice needs to be supported by power. And you, Tim, you're not qualified. As Feng Bujue spoke, he stepped back and stood next to the railing of the rooftop. There are two things you need to know. He took out a mobile phone and threw it to Tim. Tim's dynamic vision was excellent. When he saw that it was not a hidden weapon, he reached out and caught it. Open the notepad. There are 3 sets of numbers in the first file. Those numbers mark the coordinates of a bomb. Feng Bujue said, and that bomb is located in an apartment 1 mile from here. It will explode in 10 minutes. He paused for 2 seconds and said, The second thing is if you or the other members of the gods net meet other travelers from another world, do not believe a single word they say. When they express that they are not hostile or surrender, you should be on high alert. That is a sign that they are about to start a massacre. At this point, Feng Bujue opened his arms and leaped backward, jumping down from the building. Tim hurried to the edge of the rooftop and saw Feng Bujue open a rectangular paragliding parachute in midair and fly into the distance. Sage, can you hear me? It's Tim. Tim immediately turned on the communicator. Hey, Tim, what's the situation? I heard that you went after that. Okay, Barbara, there's no time. Listen to me first. Tim interrupted. I'm now going to defuse a bomb installed by a madman. Please spread a message to all members of the network. When he said this, he was already running. Using ropes and flying hooks, Tim easily arrived at the original building and began to walk down, ready to jump into his car, which could reach a maximum speed of 300 kilometers per hour. Tell Dick to be careful of the 2 travelers from another world. Their surrender is likely to be a trick. They must be locked up in a super criminal cell and watched closely. 5 minutes later, Feng Bujue, who had landed a few streets away, had already packed up his parachute and walked leisurely into a small street. He went straight to a luxury car parked on the side of the street, came to the back seat, and opened the door to enter. Inside the car sat a tall, middle-aged man. The right side of his face was normal, and his hairstyle was also normal. The other side of his face was festering and had no skin, and his hair was in a hairstyle that was cut and dried in one go. His suit was also very special. The right side was black, and the style was steady and solemn. The left side, on the other hand, was a fancy striped suit, which was like the outfit commonly used by middle-level mafia cadres. Feng Bujue unceremoniously sat opposite the two-faced man, took a bottle of whiskey from the minibar, and poured himself a glass. They've taken the bait. Tell your people to get ready. Chapter 280. At around 8 p.m., the street in front of Gotham Police Station was filled with protesters and reporters. People were holding signs and chanting slogans. The slogans on the signs were mostly directed at Gordon, like Gordon needs to step down, Gordon needs to leave, and others included dereliction of duty, go bat, hang them, and so on. When Gordon appeared on the street, a large group of reporters surrounded him. They aimed their microphones, recorders, cameras, and lights at him. Many sharp questions were thrown at Gordon. I hear another 15 officers have resigned today. Is that true? How long will it take for the streets to return to normal? Who was responsible for the loss from today's bank robbery? How are you going to explain this to the families of the dead officers? How did that John Doe slip away from the police? Mr. Inspector, has the criminal organization infiltrated the police force? Is the police being threatened by the gangs? Isn't it time for you to consider resigning, Inspector Gordon? In this world, there were many people who thought they were so smart, who thought they were so important, who thought their life and career was so meaningful. Actually, it was all bullsh*t. In America, most reporters had this tendency to be full of themselves. They thought they had changed the direction of the public opinion and changed the fate of others. They thought they were smarter and more insightful than normal citizens. They made irresponsible comments every day, using their position and professional knowledge to twist the truth to gain a higher social status, attention, and profit for themselves. For that, they would not hesitate to ruin the reputation and life of others. In the eyes of others, this group of people was a bunch of self-righteous demons, which made them feel disgusted. They were disgusting. However, they were so full of themselves that they had no idea what they were doing. But in reality, they were not superior to others. That was just an illusion. If these people walked from behind the camera to in front of the camera, from the reporter to the reporter, they would immediately realize what kind of people they were. When their insignificant right to sow discord was taken away, under the hypocritical face, they were just a group of instigators. This was a group of people who had existed since the dark ages of the Middle Ages. They were described in the Bible as one of the harbingers of the end of the world. From the moment these people imposed their views and positions on others, they had forgotten the essence of this profession. When a bystander or recorder crossed an invisible boundary, he would go further and further away and eventually become a liar or writer who would do anything to attract attention. Most of the reporters in Gotham City were like that. As for the citizens of Gotham City, please allow me to quote a passage from Maupassant's Orla. The people are like a herd of imbecile cattle. Sometimes they are submissive to the point of stupidity, and sometimes they are violent to the point of rebellion. They received orders saying, "Rejoice," and obeyed. Then they received orders saying, "Go to war with your neighbors," and obeyed. Command them to support the emperor, and they kowtow. Then command them to support the republic, and they cheer. Those who controlled the people were just as stupid, except that they did not obey a master, but some principles. These principles, because they are principles, must be absurd and false, because they seek to establish certain immutable notions, and there is nothing immutable in this world. All we see and hear are illusions. Our Inspector Gordon was the cowherder. So were the superheroes at the network. They tried their best to protect this city, to ensure that the citizens could live and work in peace. But they were still questioned and attacked by the agitators. While they risked their lives to fight against the criminals, they had to make compromises at many times. Therefore, Fong Bujua mocked them and even felt sorry for them. Compared to the tragedy of the villains, the tragedy of the heroes was more self-inflicted. Last question. Is Batman really dead? The person who asked this question was a unique and charismatic voice. Gordon turned his head toward the voice and saw a small man in a green suit at the edge of the crowd. He was leaning against the wall and looking at him with a relaxed expression. "The Riddler," Gordon mumbled. Unfortunately, as Fong Bujua said, in this law-abiding place, even if you knew there was a super criminal standing before you, you could not simply arrest him. "Okay, please move aside and let the car pass. This is an important criminal." Gordon stared at the Riddler for a few seconds and then squeezed through the reporters. At that moment, a van that was used to transport criminals drove down the street. Several armed officers quickly jumped down from the van and stood in 2 rows. On the other side, 2 criminals walked down the steps from the police station. At that moment, Shiva and 7 Kills were each restrained by 2 officers, and their hands and feet were shackled. About 20 minutes ago, the 2 entered the police station's interrogation room. Before they could sit down, Nightwing, who was interrogating them, suddenly left to take a call. It was unknown what Sage said to him, but in any case, the interrogation ended, and then this happened. At that moment, the 2 players realized that the situation was not good. They had the same thought. knowing that there were superheroes watching them. If they resisted, they might be killed on the spot. They should wait and see if there was a chance to escape. Sage, the two from the police station are about to depart. Nightwing, who stood on the roof of the police station, looked down and communicated with the Batcave. I'm worried that they might escape halfway, so I plan to follow them. How is Tim? Not good. We lost contact about 15 minutes ago, which is the time limit of the explosion that he mentioned, Sage replied. Damien was closest to him, and he's already on his way. He drove the Batmobile. If something happens to Tim, the car has emergency life support equipment. The face under Nightwing's mask revealed a trace of worry. I have a bad feeling about this. Babla, you'd better call someone else over. Okay, I'll contact them as soon as possible, Sage replied. I'm temporarily tied up here. If there's any news about Tim, call me, okay? Nightwing asked. You be careful. Dick, Sage said with concern. At the same time, inside a warehouse in Gotham City. Where am I? Tim Drake woke up from his temporary coma. When he got used to the light around him, he realized that there was a figure in a purple suit standing before him. Don't worry, Tim. When you were unconscious, we moved you here to a safe place, Phone Bujue replied, facing away from Tim. When he said that, he was adjusting a camera. Chapter 281. Some might wonder where Phone Bujue got the bombs and paragliders from. How did he get his hands on the Two-Faced Man, and what happened to Mr. Freeze? Because they were all trivial matters. Therefore, I won't go into details one by one. I'll just briefly explain them here. First of all, Shadow King was not killed by Phone Bujue's explosion. He was forced to retreat by himself. At the time, this man thought that he might not be killed by the explosion. He stayed in the ice to watch Phone Bujue and Mr. Freeze set up the bomb. After looking at it for about 10 minutes, he despaired. Even though he was an outsider, he could see the scale of the explosion. Therefore, he retreated. However, Phone Bujue and Mr. Freeze still blew up the factory. The reason was to destroy the evidence. The main reason was that this explosion was part of Phone Bujue's follow-up plan. After that, Phone Bujue and Mr. Freeze went to another of his strongholds in the city. There, Professor Fries ate a piece of SCP-500. He did not want to risk his wife. His cold-blooded body was cured. Only then did Mr. Freeze fully believe that the medicine given by Phone Bujue was really a cure for all diseases. Soon, Professor Fries used the medicine to cure his wife. He did not even need to defrost her. The medicine not only cured his wife's illness, but it also woke her up. Fries was very grateful to Phone Bujue. This gave the latter a lot of room to bargain. Therefore, Phone Bujue asked for more than the cryogenic armor and the frozen pulse gun. He asked for all the criminal resources of the super criminal, Mr. Freeze. Of course, Phone Bujue would pay. The price was negotiable. After receiving this information, Phone Bujue immediately contacted the Two-Faced Man. Both Two-Faced Man and Penguin Man were mafia bosses with legitimate businesses. For Phone Bujue, it was not difficult to find them. The difficult part was convincing Two-Faced Man to cooperate with a nobody like him. Fortunately, Brother Jew was good with words and was familiar with these characters' personalities. He displayed his dimensional technology, which was his inventory, expressed his standpoint. He was not a good person, and U-Shield to block a few bullets that the Two-Faced Man shot at him. Finally, Harvey Dent gave the otherworldly traveler a chance, tossing a coin to decide whether to believe him. By the time everything was ready, some time had passed since the explosion. The police had naturally gotten wind of it and knew that the incident was related to the supervillain. If the police knew, it meant that the heroes of the network of God knew as well. Therefore, Phone Bujue concluded that a certain hero would come to this area, and most likely alone. Then, there was the scene he put on in front of Tim. If it was the fake Batman played by Jason Todd, then Phone Bujue might really be in danger. However, a good young man like Tim Drake was too easy to deal with. His every move, thought process, and behavior were all within Phone Bujue's expectations. It wasn't a matter of IQ or combat ability, but the character's settings. Good people had too many scruples. They only needed a hostage or a threat to the safety of the public to make their actions difficult. If the villains in American comics were as unscrupulous as Fong Bujue, the good characters would have died long ago. When Tim woke up, he was a little groggy. The heavy blow to his head not long ago had caused him to have short-term memory loss. However, the first thing he did was to observe his surroundings. There was a camera in front of him and 2 lights with brackets. The backlit area was pitch black, and he couldn't see clearly. Looking around, the illuminated area to his sides and behind him was very limited. Only a circular area of about 10 square meters could be seen. The distance was also shrouded in darkness. Looking up, he could see a high roof. Judging from the curvature of the roof, this should be a rather large warehouse. "Hey, I'm not ready to star in a movie yet," Tim said. "Your sense of humor can't change the situation, little bird." The two-faced man's voice suddenly rang out. Tim looked up and saw Harvey Dent's split image walking out of the darkness. "The two-faced man, Mr. Dent, and I have reached a certain consensus." Fong Bujue had finished adjusting the machine. He turned around and said, "Your death will be a great performance. What are you going to do? Traveler from another world?" Tim glanced at the camera from the corner of his eye. "You and the two-faced man." Okay, Tim," Fong Bujue interrupted. "I haven't started recording yet. If you want to leave clues in the video, at least wait until I turn on the machine. I won't die in vain. The network of God will avenge me." Tim wasn't afraid of death. The awareness of death was a necessary quality for a superhero. "I want them to avenge you," Fong Bujue replied. "The sooner the better, the harder the better. Hatred is the motivation, Tim. It's just that sometimes hatred can blind people." The two-faced man turned to Fong Bujue and said, "Kid, I'm warning you, don't talk nonsense in front of the camera. This is not a live stream." Fong Bujue shrugged. "Humph," the two-faced man scoffed. "Don't worry, I'm different from your useless subordinates, Mr. Dent." Fong Bujue made an inviting gesture. "Now, please take a few steps back. Don't let the camera capture you." The two-faced man's lips twitched. He adjusted the collar of his suit and turned to walk back into the darkness. "Okay, before we start," Fong Bujue picked up a roll of tape from a nearby table and used it to seal Tim's mouth. Tim tried, but no matter how hard he tried, that was the only sound that came out of his mouth. Right then, Fong Bujue turned on the camera and started recording. "Good evening, viewers from Gotham City." He stood before the camera, and his body blocked Tim, who was tied to the chair. "First, let me introduce myself. I am a traveler from another world. You can call me John Doe." He paused. "I'm the man who poured millions of dollars on the street and killed 3 police officers." When he heard that, Tim realized that the situation was not good. The arguments that Fong Bujue had told him about the law, even though they sounded extreme, could become reality. If Fong Bujue wanted to get away with it, the police did not have enough evidence to send him to jail. But at that moment, Fong Bujue was not wearing a mask. He stood before the camera and admitted his crime. This meant that he did not mind doing something else before the camera, like killing a superhero. I believe many of you know him. Fong Bujue turned his body to the side to reveal Tim, who was behind him. He is Robin, a young superhero, a member of the network, and once Batman's sidekick. Fong Bujue left the camera and returned several seconds later with a belt in his hand. This belt is fully equipped. It can prove that he is the real Robin and not a civilian who was forced to wear a tight suit by me. He waved the belt twice before the camera. Claw gun, stun grenade, smoke grenade, night vision goggles, and so on. I believe members of the network should be able to tell the difference. He put down the belt and took out a small knife from his pocket. He took one step forward and leaned toward the camera. He revealed a maniacal smile. "Guess what I'm going to do next?" "Ha! Ah!" Following the maniacal laughter, Fong Bujue suddenly lunged at Tim. He walked behind Tim to face the camera. His left hand grabbed the man's hair, and the knife in his right hand was pressed against Tim's neck. Since he could not speak, Tim tried to use the method of blinking to leave behind some clues in the video, but most of the time, Fong Bujue blocked him, rendering him powerless. At that moment, facing death, there was only fear and despair in Tim's eyes. "Citizens of Gotham, Inspector Gordon and your officers members of the network, and that man who calls himself Batman. Yes, you know I'm talking about you. Fong Bujua did not cut down immediately. He pressed the blade against Tim's carotid artery and continued. This is just the beginning. From now on, me and my few otherworldly allies, as well as a new friend that I made not long ago in the city, will start a free hunt for the police, their families, and superheroes. He paused for 2 seconds before adding, also, Harvey Dent, Mr. Two-Face. After Black Mask's death, do you think you can be the boss here? You're wrong. You have to die as well. No one will be able to stop us, not even if Batman comes back from the dead. His voice rose. Those who do not wish to be stained with blood, shut your mouths and go back to your warm homes to quietly witness this great moment. The next second, the blade slit across Tim's neck. A glaring red spurted out, and a few drops even splashed on the camera lens. Amid Fong Bujua's maniacal laughter, the screen went black, and the video stopped there. Half a minute later, when Fong Bujua tore off the tape on Tim's mouth, Tim mumbled woodenly, "What happened?" This is called special effects. Fong Bujua showed his palm. Using the spiderweb glove, he had stuck a bag of blood on his palm. Even though it looked like it in the video, it was actually a trick. You guys take him away and lock him up. Two-Face's voice echoed in the dark again. His few underlings untied Tim from the chair and dragged him away. After they walked away, Two-Face walked to the light and told Fong Bujua, "Your method better be effective." Fong Bujua was standing behind the camera, watching the replay. "Don't worry, we'll make a few copies of this video and hand them over to the various television stations in Gotham. In less than an hour, the whole city will see it." He smiled. "Then, it will depend on the reaction of the heroes. Based on my prediction, before dawn, Mr. Cobert will be dragged out from his bed and given a good beating." Chapter 282. Dogs were loyal and friendly, but cats were cold, independent, and unreliable. Cats were like women. They were hard to understand, but they were incredibly charming. Gotham City in the dark was lit up by thousands of lights. The scene was like stars falling to the ground, but they were also like sparkling diamonds that dotted the black velvet that was filled with danger. In the night, a graceful shadow flitted across the buildings. She was the creation of the night and the shadows. She was cold, indifferent, and independent. She was a cat and a woman. Many years ago, she swore to herself that she would collect those stars to warm her cold heart. She became a thief, using her freedom and life as the gambling stake for her hunt. When she was 18, her skill had reached a new level. She chose her targets more carefully, and her movements became stealthier. She was no longer a pickpocket, but a master thief. Then, she changed. She fell in love with another creature of the night. A night walker who wandered beyond the law to protect justice, a man who hid in the shadows. One night, she saw him with her own eyes. She could not help but admire his nimble movements and envy his amazing disguise. Inspired by his bat-like appearance, she had an idea. She put on the cat disguise and equipped her gloves with sharp claws. From then on, she only attacked criminals. She was also intoxicated by his ambiguous relationship with her. But one day, he died, but she continued to fight to be the kind of person that he wanted her to be. Not a scaredy cat's current attire was similar to the male swordsman's attire in RO, the Western fantasy attire of the Industrial Revolution and magic civilization. However, in this scenario, the player's appearance was not protected by the screen. In other words, the characters in the scenario would see her no matter how she dressed. This undoubtedly brought her a lot of inconveniences in her actions. Earlier, to escape from 7 kills, she had rammed through the road, used a large cold weapon to stab a taxi in the middle of the street, and then used 2 firearms to shoot at it. These scenes were all captured by the cameras at the nearby streets and shops. But until now, she could not even change into the attire that she was wearing when she committed the crime. She could only maintain her appearance and hide in the city. In the end, she was discovered by a hero from the network. This was a residential area, and there were many apartment buildings that were 6 or 7 stories tall. She was on the rooftop of one of them. "It's time for the game of hide-and-seek to end, little girl," A woman in a tight black leather suit said, as she stood before Not a Scaredy Cat. "Tis, Not a Scaredy Cat," spat unhappily. As she turned around, she took out an Uzi submachine gun and fired at Feline Girl. "Stay away from me." But her firepower did not stop her. The Catwoman's agility and speed were far above Not a Scaredy Cat. With a few somersaults, she closed the distance. "I really have no idea what is wrong with you criminals from another world." Selena chased after her. Her lithe body somersaulted in the air, and a swift kick aimed at the back of Not a Scaredy Cat's neck. "First, you killed innocent citizens on the street, and now you dare to lay your hands on Robin?" Her tone was laced with anger. "I don't know what you're talking about." Not afraid at all. After dodging the attack, he raised his gun and fired a few more times before continuing to run away. About 10 minutes ago, the video that was directed by Fong Bujue had gone viral, and half of Gotham City had seen it. The sage in the Batcave also watched the video immediately and informed the heroes of the Net of God of the news of Tim Drake's death, as well as the information revealed by John Doe in the video. Therefore, at this very moment, the police, superheroes, and even Mr. Jason Todd were all in a state of rage. Fong Bujue, as the instigator of all this, naturally saw it with his own eyes, and he was overjoyed. Two-Face had planted spies within the police force, so he could get a lot of first-hand information. Fong Bujue had heard about the commotion that Not a Scaredy Cat had caused on the streets and the arrest of 7 kills and Shiva. He had cooperated with Two-Face to direct this show. In other words, they were borrowing the power of justice in Gotham City to eliminate their own enemies. The two of them only needed to watch from the sidelines. Even if the plan was exposed, it did not matter because Fong Bujue had left a trump card for Harvey. Tim was actually still alive. "You don't need to know," Selena said. "You only need to pay the price for your actions." Her claws lashed out like the wind. Not a Scaredy Cat was unable to dodge in time, and 4 bloody wounds appeared on her left cheek. The wounds were deep, and blood kept flowing. "You've crossed the line," Not a Scaredy Cat grumbled. She put her gun away and took out her main weapon, Thunder Rod. Not a Scaredy Cat actually did not want to get into conflict with these characters. In fact, other than Fong Bujue, she did not want to fight anyone else. After seeing the names of the other 5 players, Not a Scaredy Cat's first reaction was to keep a low profile and wait for the other 5 to be injured before she had a chance at victory. This was because the only opponent that she was confident she could beat was that level 28 guy. With that thought in mind, Not a Scaredy Cat was unfortunately found by 7 kills. In the process of her escape, 3 civilians died because of her, laying the groundwork for the current situation. To be fair, this was not her fault. For a player, was it a big deal to accidentally kill a small character in a game? When playing Elder Scrolls, what was the big deal about attacking an NPC in a town due to a slip of the hand? When playing Call of Duty, it was common for players to kill their allies due to the sudden appearance of an ally. The surroundings were too dark, or the clothes were too similar, right? When playing GTA, after having sex with a prostitute in the car, killing her to rob her of her money, fine, that was a bit too much. In any case, what I mean is, in a virtual world where human life is worthless, do we really have to worry about every life that has been lost? I think everyone is already numb to it. Have you counted how many people you have killed in Contra? Have you counted how many ducks you have killed in Super Mario? Have you counted how many plants and zombies you have killed in front of your eyes? Killing is the eternal theme of games. We're used to killing things in front of the screen, whether they are humans, monsters, or fruits. As long as we know that we cannot do that in real life, it will be fine, right? Let's return to the story. In the blink of an eye, Not a Scaredy Cat's thunder pestle swept toward Catgirl. The latter did not panic. She twisted her slim waist and stood where she was. Her upper body leaned back, and her body almost folded in half to avoid the thunder pestle. Then, Catgirl's slender legs straightened and kicked heavily on Not a Scaredy Cat's shin. Not a Scaredy Cat took a step back from the pain. The blow to her head made her dizzy, and her footing was unstable. Catgirl took advantage of the situation and did a handstand split to attack again. Chapter 283. Ha ha ha. How much longer do you think she can last? Woody's voice suddenly came from behind Disaster. Famine did not turn around and replied softly. Are you referring to Catwoman? Woody smiled. Oh, do you think not a scaredy cat can win? Disaster replied. By the standards of the heroes without superpowers in the DC universe, Selina Kyle's ability isn't outstanding. Her speed and jumping ability are 4 times that of a normal person, and her endurance when falling from a high place and receiving a heavy blow is 3 times that of a normal person. In terms of strength, she is only slightly stronger than a healthy adult man. This kind of power is much weaker than male heroes like Nightwing and Nightwing. She paused. Even if not a scaredy cat uses any power, the two of them should be evenly matched. At that moment, she and Woody were floating in the air and had hidden their tracks. No consciousness in this dimension could detect their presence. And of course, that did not include not a scaredy cat and Catwoman who were fighting below them. But Catwoman has 2 things that not a scaredy cat has. Woody continued. One is excellent fighting skills, and the other is the luck of a main character in this universe. Luck? Famine repeated. Oomph. Are you saying that she won't die? Yes and no. Woody smiled. He. For main heroes or villains like Catwoman, if they want to die, most of them will fake their death. After disappearing for a period of time, they will reappear. If the players want to die these characters, they have to master the correct method. They mustn't chop off their heads or beat them into meat paste. If they do that, the DC Universe's highest consciousness might interfere, like sending Superman to stop the players. Woody's tone was laced with sarcasm. To kill these main characters, I personally recommend a few more classic methods. 1. Shoot a bullet several millimeters away from their heart. 2. Push them into the abyss. 3. Make them disappear in an explosion. He opened his arms. You have to leave some leeway for the highest consciousness, understand? That way, it'll be easier for him to revive these characters. TSK. It sounds like the highest consciousness here is the same as our boss. He likes to beat around the bush, Disaster replied. Woody continued to chuckle. Actually, the Marvel World's OAA is the same. If there are too many uncorrectable mistakes, it has to restart all the world lines and clear the memories of life. All right, let's get to the point, Disaster said. You suddenly appeared just to tell me that the person I bet on is about to lose? That's only one of the reasons. Woody's smile was incomparably lewd. In addition, I also want to show off that my people have already won. One day, Woody, I'm going to rip out your throat so that you won't be able to laugh anymore, Disaster said coldly. But that won't be today, Woody replied. At this moment, the young man who bet on Pestilence has been forced to retreat, and Mr. U's people have been killed. With the death of your little girl, the last variable will disappear. You dare to say that victory is within your grasp? Famine coldly snorted. Even if my people really do die here as you predicted, you still won't be able to win. She turned around and said, Sid Shiva and War's 7 kills are far more powerful than that madman under you. It's only a matter of time before the two regain their freedom. It's only when they regain their freedom that things will be easier. At the same time, in the car that left the police station. Hey, where are we going? 7 kills yelled at the officers on the car through the window and bulletproof glass. However, the officers ignored him. The car's design was unique. There was only a small window between the driver's seat and the back of the car. The window was made of bulletproof glass, and both sides of the glass were covered with iron mesh. The back of the car was surrounded by metal plates that were as tough as armor. The door could not be opened from the inside, and there were many reliable latches on the outside. Based on their experience in transporting supervillains, the Gotham police had come up with this kind of car. The officers responsible for the transport would not be in the same car as these criminals, lest they were hijacked. Other than the passenger in front, the other officers and the key to the back of the car were in the other car. When they reached their destination, the people in the other car would get out and surround the car to open the door. Don't waste your energy. They can't hear you. Shiva still looked unfazed. You sure have it easy, 7 kills said. Aren't you afraid that I'll suddenly kill you? At that moment, the two were sitting across from each other, less than 1 meter away from each other. For a fighting specialist like 7 kills, this was indeed a situation where he had the upper hand. You and I both know that if we want to escape, the chance of success is higher if we work together, Shiva said. If we want to fight, we have to shake off the police and superheroes first. Then, what are you waiting for? 7 kills said. He pulled his arms to the side and broke the chain in the middle of the handcuffs. He did the same to the chains on his feet. I'm waiting for the car to be far enough away from the city center, Shiva replied. That way, when we run, there won't be any superheroes nearby to help us. When 7 kills heard that, he stood up and looked out the window. He wanted to see the scenery outside through the windshield, but there were 2 layers of glass, and it was night outside. He could not see clearly. There's no need to waste your energy. My sleuthing mastery is not bad, so I have a general idea of the situation outside, Shiva said. We should be close to the edge of the city, and we can make our move at any time, but I'm thinking about something. What is it? 7 kills asked. Don't you think it's weird? We've already surrendered and followed them into the police station. Why would they stop halfway through the interrogation and try to send us somewhere else? Of course, they're afraid of our power. Perhaps that is one of the reasons, Shiva said. But I think there are other reasons. He raised his eyes to look at 7 kills. We've been very cooperative, and you and I have not directly harmed any of the citizens of Gotham City. But why do they suddenly seem to have lost their trust in us and can't wait to send us somewhere else to deal with us? Did someone say or do something to change their mind? 7 kills thought about it for a few seconds. Now that I think about it, Shadow King's death sure is strange, Shiva said. Obviously, there's more to that Fong Bujua than meets the eye. Does he have some kind of skill that allows him to control the actions of the characters in the scenario? 7 kills asked. If he really has that kind of skill, we would be dead already. He only needs to send 1 or 2 superheroes to assassinate us when we're alone, and the problem will be solved, Shiva said. My speculation is this Fong Bujua has been causing trouble everywhere and then dragged us into the same situation as him, causing the NPC to view us as enemies. 7 kills heard that and agreed with that possibility. Oh, so if we resist and run now, we'll have fallen into his trap, and we won't be able to explain ourselves. That's right, but from the looks of it, that is our only choice, Shiva said. If we run, we'll become enemies with the righteous forces in the scenario. It'll be very dangerous and passive. He paused. But if we don't run, we might be sent to a place like Blackgate Prison to be guarded. Then, it'll become a competition of game time. If he hasn't logged into Thriller Paradise for long today, we'll be kicked offline before he does. Without a fight, he won against 2 people on the combat stat ranking, 7 kills said, and he started to laugh. Fong Buju is such a good plan. What I don't understand is, since the superheroes can find us, they can find him as well. He can't be stronger than us, so how can he avoid being captured or killed? Shiva asked. Perhaps he's already been captured, but he's not locked up with us. For him, he only needs to stay alive and stay away from other players, 7 kills said. The mission for Indistinguishable Mode is to be the only surviving player in the scenario, so I believe he's trying to win without fighting us. He has used the rules reasonably and the resources in the scenario to checkmate us, Shiva said. He struggled free from the restraints on his limbs. At this point, we can't change the situation. After all, it takes time to prove that you're a good person, but you can be a bad person at any time. He stood up as well. Strategy and brute force are both ways to win. Today, it was Fong Bujue, this player who is not on the combat stat ranking, who taught us a lesson. 7 kills also stood up. Don't make it sound like he's already won. I haven't given up yet. I have a suggestion, Shiva said. 7 kills knew what he was going to say, so he smiled. After we escape, we shouldn't fight, right? That's right, but there's no trust between us, Shiva said. As for working together, forget it. We'll split up, and after one of us finds and kills that guy, we'll fight again. Both of them were top players, so they would not allow an unknown player like Fong Bujue to scheme against them. At this point, they could win this killing game, but they could not let the level 28 guy win or else it would be too easy for him. Therefore, the two experts came to an agreement in just a few words. Moments later, there was a loud boom, and the van that they were escorting was pulled by an internal force. It bounced off the ground and flipped in the air. Then there was a flash of fire under the van, and two figures leaped out. Chapter 284. At least on one thing, Shiva and Seven Kills were right. Fong Bujue had indeed been found by one of the heroes in the scenario. Perhaps it was the order of the highest consciousness, or perhaps it was the arrangement of the system. But when Fong Bujue got into a car that he had gotten from Two-Face and drove toward Wayne Manor, he ran into the person that he did not want to run into the most. A shadow fell from the sky and landed on the car hood with a bang. Fong Bujue reacted quickly and slammed on the brakes. But the person was not pushed away by inertia, but stood there steadily. A pitch-black cloak, a dark-colored tight suit, a distinct outline of muscles, and a pair of crimson eyes. He was Jason Todd, the former second-generation Robin, later the Red Hood, and now the fake Batman. Todd's bat mask came with a metal mask, and there was a row of bullets strapped to his body like a Rambo. As the cruelest hero in Gotham City, the biggest difference between him and the real Batman was he used two guns and could kill. Bang, bang, bang. The windshield was shattered by the bullets, and there were 6 or 7 bullet holes in the driver's seat. Who was Fong Bujue? He would not be killed by this kind of attack. As soon as he saw that it was Todd, he activated the body enhancement technique without saying a word, kicked open the car door, and rushed out. His movement was smooth and fast. If he had been slower, he would have been turned into a sieve. Where are you going? Todd moved incredibly fast. 3 seconds later, he caught up to Fong Bujue, who was in body enhancement spell. As he spoke, he launched a vicious attack. Fong Bujue did not manage to evade the attack, and his back was hit squarely by the enemy's knee. In the 10 seconds after he was hit, Fong Bujue was in a state of suffocation. He could not breathe, and the blood in his chest was boiling. However, he resisted the pain and used the momentum to roll forward and quickly expose the bomb on his body. "Don't come any closer," he yelled with his last breath. Todd's movements paused, and he did not continue to attack. "Huh, huh." Fong Bujue knelt down on one knee and took a long time to catch his breath. The two were currently standing in the middle of the road, but due to the lack of security in Gotham City, there were practically no pedestrians on the street, and there were barely any cars. However, from the dark alleys, there were many pairs of evil eyes peeking in this direction. This move really works every time. Seeing that the situation had stabilized for the time being, Fong Bujue quickly removed the body enhancement spell and stopped the loss of his HP. He stood up shakily and wiped his mouth. That attack just now was really ruthless, even making him drool. "Do you really think I care if you or anyone else nearby gets blown up?" Todd's hoarse and deep voice came from under the metal mask. It really did sound like the real Batman. "Of course you don't care." Fong Bujue smirked. "I think you just saw the power of the bomb strapped to my body. At this distance, even with the protection of the Kevlar suit and the memory cloth cape, you will be blown up together with me." "Humph." Todd also smirked and put away his guns. "You seem to know a lot, kid. You were quite good at evading the bullets at the beginning." "If I didn't evade those few bullets, we would both be dead now," Fong Bujue replied. "Yes, I will be more careful next time," Todd said sarcastically. These days, there are more and more people running around with explosives strapped to their bodies. Huh. Fong Bujue was not going to lose to Todd when it came to sarcasm. Compared to someone pretending to be Batman with a gun, it's not that weird to run around with explosives strapped to your body, right? Todd's voice suddenly turned cold. "I am Batman." "Ah." Fong Bujue was now in high spirits. Jason. He said the man's name directly. If Bruce saw you like this, what would he think? This name undoubtedly touched Todd's bottom line. He suddenly roared, "Don't mention this name in front of me," he said angrily. "Who are you? How did you know? Look at you." Fong Bujue interrupted him. "You look ridiculous." He quoted the line that Jason said when he was fighting Tim in the comic. "You look like a child playing trick or treating." Todd was silent for a few seconds. He was not angered further. You remind me of someone, ha ha. Fong Bujue deliberately imitated the Joker and let out a maniacal laugh. What? Did the murder of the other Robin remind you of anything unpleasant? He tried to distract the man so that he could find a chance to escape. Do you think you're invincible after killing him once on Earth 51? You should go to therapy, Jason, because you're as crazy as he is. Enough, Todd roared. With a flick of his cape, he spun and charged forward. His speed was extremely fast. Combined with his initial movement, he left behind an afterimage in Fong Bujue's eyes. His superior agility and physique made it difficult for Fong Bujue to fight back. In the blink of an eye, the man closed in again, and he took another blow to his ribs. Fong Bujue, who had full life points, only had 27% of his life points left after being hit twice by Todd. This went to show how powerful the heroes in this scenario were. Where is the detonator? Todd grabbed Fong Bujue's collar and demanded. Ha! Who knows? But I have to remind you, if I lose consciousness, for example, I'm knocked out by you, the bomb will explode. Of course, Fong Bujue was making this up, but his ability to lie was obvious. Be it his tone or expression, he was incredibly confident. There are many ways to make you lose your ability to resist. Todd grinned menacingly under his mask. I've always wanted to see what effect this thing has on lunatics like you. A small green bottle appeared in his hand out of nowhere. As Todd waved his hand, a cloud of green smoke shot out from the mouth of the bottle, and it flew at Fong Bujue's face. Cough! Cough! Fong Bujue was unable to evade under the pressure of the man, and he choked on several mouthfuls of the gas. It's time for you to have a taste of fear, you madman, Todd said. Once that was said, Fong Bujue understood what he had inhaled. It was the fear gas of the Scarecrow. His real name was Jonathan Klein, a super criminal with a Ph.D. in psychology and biochemistry and a former professor at Gotham University. In Battle for the Mantle, Todd had stolen some of the fear gas from the Batcave and used it to fight against Nightwing. However, he did not expect Nightwing to have been injected with all the known variants of the fear gas, so he was not afraid at all. He was only slightly affected by the gas. Todd, who thought he had the situation under control, exposed his weakness, and that was the turning point that led to his defeat by Nightwing. Ha! Ha ha ha! About 10 seconds later, Fong Bujue looked at the man with a smile. Seriously, Jason, do you have more of this? Give me more. Chapter 285. Looks like you've really lost your mind. Todd looked into Fong Bujue's eyes, but there was not a trace of fear in them. I still stand by my point of view. Fong Bujue silently activated body enhancement spell. The one who wears the bat suit is the crazy one. Before he finished, he suddenly threw a punch. Even under the effect of body enhancement spell, his speed was still slower than Todd's. This was something Fong Bujue understood when he was hit by the knee earlier. Since the opponent's speed was faster, the result of his attack would be blocked or dodged. Under this premise, Fong Bujue naturally had to adjust the angle of his attack so that the opponent would not be able to dodge. Todd had a more objective assessment of Fong Bujue's strength and speed. In terms of speed, he was definitely slower than him. In terms of strength, the kid weighed around 120 pounds. Even if he was stronger than a normal person, the strength of his punch would not exceed 200 pounds. Therefore, Todd only used a very standard action, which was to raise his arm to block. How could he have known that players had such things as skills? And Fong Bujue's skill, Kya, was even more unpredictable and unpredictable. Even he himself did not know what he would unleash. The fist rolled over, and with a crack, Todd's right forearm was fractured. That was not the end. The remaining force pushed his already weak arm towards his torso, and then pushed Todd's body to fly out. The burly man flew backward like a cannonball and broke a fire hydrant by the street. Finally, he slammed into the wall of a building by the road before coming to a stop. Name: EX Impact Punch Skill Card Type. Active Skill, Permanent Skill Type. Fighting Effect. Uses the wrist to deliver powerful punches. Consumption: 500 stamina points. Learning requirement: Fighting C or General Ability C. Remark, an attack created by King, a fist bison. With his large body, he uses unimaginable agility to take a step forward, and the punch that carries his weight has amazing destructive power. This move didn't have any additional attributes. It was purely to increase the destructive power of the fist and then throw out. But sometimes, the simplest and most direct moves were the most effective. Since Jason Todd did not know much about Fong Bujua, he had no choice but to admit his loss. However, Todd was indeed strong. Even though his body was in great pain, he did not faint or slow down. He immediately got up from the ground and threw out a smoke grenade from his waist. Upon seeing this, Fong Bujua changed the goblin's poison mask to display and retreated. When the smoke dissipated, Todd's figure appeared on top of a 2-story building by the roadside. The voice that came from under the mask sounded like a beast growl. "I've underestimated you. So you're not an ordinary human." Todd obviously thought that Fong Bujua was a criminal with superpowers. Of course, this inference was understandable. It was as if he met someone who looked so weak that he couldn't even stand up to a gust of wind. Who would have thought that he could chop down a huge tree with a single palm strike? Unless this person was a city enforcement officer, you would think so too. Upon hearing this, Fong Bujua was secretly delighted. But on the surface, he still looked the same. He smiled faintly. "My abilities are more than that. Don't think that you can solve the problem just because you're a little faster than me." Bluffing was his strength. "I know your marksmanship is good, so I'll emphasize it again. Once I lose consciousness, the bomb will explode. If you want to blow my head off, then you have to be prepared. The people in these streets, including you, will all die with me." He paused for a moment and said, "And if you want to subdue me with your fists and legs, I advise you to consider the injury on your arm first. And how many more attacks like that can you take?" Todd didn't know that Fong Bujua's skill had a cooldown time of 10 minutes. After listening to his seemingly threatening, but actually analyzing words, Todd felt helpless. It seemed that he couldn't handle this opponent alone. The more rational thing to do now was to retreat temporarily. At least, he had to deal with the injury on his arm first before making a move. But the problem was that Todd was also a mentally unstable person. His understanding of justice was similar to the Punisher in the Marvel Universe. They were both violent heroes. His fanaticism for abhorrence of evil was even more extreme. The pain from his broken arm stimulated Todd like a stimulant, making him want to finish off the opponent in front of him immediately. "Well said. Then I'll break your arms and legs so that you can't escape or detonate the bomb on your own." Todd raised the gun with his left arm and aimed from above. "Don't worry, I won't let you go into shock due to blood loss. Before you faint, I'll inject you with some adrenaline and morphine." Fong Bujua was in trouble. This guy didn't fall for his trick, and he was full of confidence. He didn't consider the consequences of missing the shot. "Beep!" Fong Bujua cursed and ran back to the car he was driving. After running a few steps, he instinctively realized something. His brain buzzed, and the process of reasoning flashed through his mind. A conclusion popped up. There were other players nearby. To verify this hypothesis, he tried to curse again, but this time he was stopped by the system. "Misfortune never comes alone," Fong Bujua mumbled. He took out Moxie's bad temper and fired a barrage of bullets at Todd. Of course, Todd wouldn't be hit. What was a comic book hero? For a comic book hero, in a hail of bullets, he only needed to roll, and it was no different from being invincible. Fong Bujua didn't expect this kind of attack to cause any substantial damage. He was just trying to buy time. In the trunk of his car, there was Mr. Freeze's armor. As long as he wore the armor, bullets were nothing to him. However, he needed at least 7 to 8 seconds to crawl into the heavy armor. Name: Cold Blood Armor. Type: Armor. Quality: Perfect. Defense: Extremely strong. Attribute: Refraction. Isolation. Special effect: Immune to normal bullets. Reduces damage from special bullets and heavy weapons. The internal temperature can be adjusted and maintained at a constant temperature. It comes with an air circulation and filtration system. Equip requirement: Male player who has the power to move the armor. Can be taken out of the scenario. No. Remark: The armor that Mr. Freeze normally wears has exceptional defense, but its shortcomings are obvious. 1. It is too heavy, and one has to reach a certain level of strength to wear it. Furthermore, it exhausts a lot of stamina when moving around. 2. It needs to be recharged, and the recharging time is usually 3 to 6 hours. 3. The temperature inside the armor ranges from 0 to 10 degrees Celsius. A normal person might suffer from hypothermia if they wear it for too long. Actually, there were 2 other problems that weren't written in the remark. First, even though the equipment was categorized as armor, it was more like a vehicle. It couldn't be placed inside a backpack. Therefore, Fong Bujue could only place it inside the car and drag it everywhere. Second, it was troublesome to put it on and take it off. It would take some time. In this battle where there was no time to rest, whether he could put on the armor or not became the key. Chapter 286. After Shiva and 7 kills escaped from the van, they worked together to threaten the lives of the officers around them. That was how they managed to force Nightwing back and successfully escape from capture. Of course, from that moment onward, they had basically broken off from the righteous side in the scenario. During the period of capture, it was a break for them. Even though they had expended some stamina points during the escape, overall, their 2 points were full. With their ability, when they had plenty of stamina points, they could leap freely through the concrete jungle like superheroes. The distance between the rooftops of buildings was nothing at all. They could also do the action of leaping across buildings in the movie The Matrix. Thus, after successfully escaping, the 2 of them immediately went their separate ways and quickly disappeared into the night. Let's not talk about 7 kills for now. Let's talk about Shiva first. Of the 6 players, Fong Bujue was not the only one who had red battle for the cape. Shiva knew the general plot as well, but he was confident that he could win with his combat ability, so he did not plan to get too close to the characters. But now, things were different. Facing an opponent like Fong Bujue who liked to play tricks, Shiva naturally could not be too direct, or else he would be in big trouble. After confirming that he had escaped from the pursuit, he found a place with internet access and started to gather information. News about visitors from another world was overwhelming on the internet, and the video with the highest number of views on video websites was Robin's death produced by John Doe. Shiva watched the video and read some news reports. He had a certain understanding of what Fong Bujue had been doing recently. Without a doubt, John Doe was Fong Bujue, and the kid's appearance could be confirmed. He believed that the most important piece of information was that Fong Bujue had not been captured. Shiva and 7 kills were known as otherworldly criminals A and B in the news. The news of their capture and even their escape could be found online. But the John Doe, the madman who poured money on the streets, killed the police, and killed Robin, there was no mention of his capture in the news. This meant that, at the very least, he had not been captured by the authorities. Shiva came up with 3 hypotheses. First, the kid had been caught by the net and was being lynched. Second, he had been caught by Jason Todd and was being tortured. Third, he was still at large and was plotting something. Objectively speaking, the possibility of the first scenario was extremely small. After all, the members of the Divine Net were good people. They would be angry at Tim's death, but they would not lose their minds. If he had really lost his mind, Nightwing wouldn't have been so easy to deal with when he escaped just now. The probability of the second scenario was also very low. With the Angel of Death's strength as a reference, Jason Todd could only be strong, not weak. Furthermore, this person was extremely violent. It would be very difficult for a LV-28 player to be captured alive in front of Todd. It would be normal for him to be killed instantly in battle. Therefore, the third hypothesis seemed to be the most reliable. After Shiva determined that Fong Bujue was still at large, he started to speculate about his intentions. If I were a non-combative player, what would I do now? He asked himself. Soon, 3 words popped up in Shiva's mind: Batcave. That night, the heroes of the Divine Net would be out in full force. They would be so busy that they could barely keep up. Other than the sage in the wheelchair and the old butler, there was probably no one else in the Batcave. This was like a treasure trove guarded by the old and the weak, and they could take any item they wanted. With that in mind, Shiva checked the map of Gotham City and headed to Wayne Manor. Even if they failed to find Fong Bujue, it would be beneficial for the Bat Cave to get there first. Therefore, 10 minutes later, when he was on the roof of a building, he heard gunshots and saw the battle between Todd and Fong Bujue. Even though it was night, the light from the streetlights and billboards was very bright. Combined with the good moonlight, Shiva could clearly see Fong Bujue's every movement. Since the street was quiet, sound could travel very far. Therefore, with his grade C sleuthing mastery, Shiva could hear their conversation clearly. Under such favorable conditions, of course, Shiva would not show himself. He still could not confirm whether the bomb on Fong Bujue was real or fake, and he did not know whether the power of the bomb and the trigger conditions were as described by Fong Bujue. At this moment, staying a relatively safe distance and watching the Tigers fight was undoubtedly the best choice. On Fong Bujue's side, he had also realized that he was not only being attacked by Todd, but also being monitored by other players. Of course, Brother Ju's strategy was still the same. Even though he did not know there were other players nearby, he prepared to put on his armor. This was because Todd was too strong and too annoying, and he had no choice. Jason, don't be so arrogant. Fong Bujue stopped the cover from the machine gun and used the wrench to pry open the back of the car. At the same time, he shouted, "My friend from another dimension is watching this place. If he makes a move, you're dead." Then, he jumped in the trunk and closed it. F***CK. At that moment, Shiva cursed internally. He cursed internally. What the F***CK did I do last year? How did this guy know I was nearby? He's not lying, is he? He's too lucky. Now that he's lying, I'm in big trouble. Jason Todd was indeed a superhero. Before Fong Bujue finished, he used his hawk-like gaze to scan the roofs, balconies, and windows of the surrounding buildings. Shiva did not even have time to hide before he was discovered. There really is. Todd raised his voice and said in Shiva's direction, "I heard from a network that you've escaped from Nightwing. Humph, not bad." As he said that, he pulled the trigger without giving Shiva any chance to explain. The rooftop that Shiva was on was higher than Todd's. He quickly retreated out of Todd's sight. But to his surprise, Todd immediately swapped out his rope gun and climbed up to the rooftop of another building. He came to a higher level than Shiva and continued to shoot. It was obvious that he had changed his target. Shiva could only admit that he was unlucky. After all, he did not have a bomb on him. As for Fong Bujue, after he crawled into the trunk, Todd would not be able to shoot him anymore. Who knew what kind of position the kid was in? What if he hit the bomb? "Listen, I'm not with him." Shiva rolled behind a cover and shouted, "I can prove it. Let me help you kill him." Chapter 287. Listen, he was the one who threw money on the street, he was the one who killed the police, and he was also the one who killed Robin. Shiva continued to persuade. The police and the people from the network arrested me without asking any questions, and the basis was that they thought I was dangerous, so of course I had to run. He paused for a moment. These so-called righteous people always hold on to their own set of moral principles and force others to act according to them. You should know better than me how annoying this is, right? These words were somewhat to his liking. This was because Jason Todd was considered the most rebellious Robin of all generations. He had objections to many of Bruce Wayne's ideas. A person's experience would change their perspective on things and their understanding of justice. The world of Todd, who had changed from Robin to Red Hood, was indeed one that Dick and Tim could not understand. In Todd's opinion, the two Robins of the first and third generations had been brainwashed by Wayne. They believed in a set of idealistic principles when doing things. They were unbelievably stupid. Perhaps some people would think that Todd was being extreme, but on the other hand, it could be said that Batman was overdoing it. Both of them had childhood trauma and psychological trauma, so it was hard to say whose worldview was more correct. Of course, if the Joker was the judge, he would say that they were all crazy. Is that so? Then I'll give you a chance to prove it. Todd found cover for himself, and the deep voice under the mask shouted, "You said you want to kill him, right? Then I won't interfere. You can do it alone." At that moment, with the help of the endorphins, the fracture in his right hand did not hurt as much. But if he still wanted to use this arm to shoot or hit someone in the near future, he had to be prepared to suffer more injuries and fainting from the pain. When Shiva heard that, he replied decisively, "Sure." Then he moved at high speed. With a push of his hand, he jumped off the rooftop and jumped down the street. Todd heard the commotion and poked his head out to observe. He happened to see the man jump off the building. After all, even with Todd's heroic skills, he only dared to jump down from the third floor without the help of any tools. If he went any higher, he would need the assistance of a gliding cloak or a rope. But the man in casual clothes in front of him didn't hesitate to jump down from the 8th floor of the roof. Are these otherworldly travelers not normal humans? Todd thought to himself. At this point, he was sure that all of them had superpowers. After Shiva landed, he lifted his head to look at the rooftop. He did not see Todd, but he knew that the man was watching him from above. "I hope you can keep your promise," Shiva said. "Don't ambush me when I kill him." He was met with silence, but that was enough. Shiva then turned his attention to the car where Fong Bujua was hiding, and a cold smile appeared on his lips. The spiritual weapon, Heavenly Hourglass Dance, had already appeared behind him. After the 7 stone plates were formed by white light, they flew out and headed straight for their target. With Shiva as the center, the stone plates could move freely within a radius of 200 meters. They were like 7 highly agile, floating cannons that could fire from any angle. Before this kind of weapon, Fong Bujue, who was hiding in the enclosed space, was like a turtle in a jar. "Those who think they are smart often dig their own graves," Shiva commented smugly. When facing Fong Bujue, he was even more fearless than Todd. He did not care about the bomb. Even if the bomb was real, as long as the explosion could not kill him, who was 200 meters away, it was meaningless. The 7 stone plates flew toward the car and circled above it like a group of vultures that had locked onto their prey and were ready to feast. Several seconds later, there was a continuous chirping sound. The stone plates shot out laser-like attacks, and all of them hit the car. This continuous siege did not last long before the car caught fire and exploded. Of course, it was just a car explosion, and the radius of the explosion was no more than 10 meters. Fong Bujua's prediction of blowing up several streets did not happen. "Do you see that, Jason?" Shiva looked up and said, "He is just a liar, and his mouth is full of lies. If he had a real bomb on him, he would have blown both of you up into the sky." Another voice interrupted Shiva and finished his sentence. Shiva looked in the direction of the voice with shock. He opened the game menu and realized that next to Fong Bujua's ID, there was still the word "alive." From the fire, a large shadow walked out. Every step the shadow took on the ground echoed with the sound of metal hitting the ground like a robot. When he saw the shadow, Shiva could not help but gasp. "What is this?" "You have Mr. Freeze's armor." Todd, who was watching the show from upstairs, recognized the armor at a glance. "Ha!" Fong Bujua guffawed. His voice came out from the armor's speaker, and it sounded electronically synthesized. "Shiva, right?" He asked the man, "Do you really think that you won't be blown up by the bomb on me from that distance?" "Humph. I've told you many times, once the bomb explodes, there will be no survivors within a few streets. Stop joking. Even if you really have TNT on your body, how much can you hide in your jacket? Are you trying to say that you have a small nuclear bomb in your jacket?" Shiva was not only expressing his suspicion, but also testing the man. Fong Bujua naturally knew what the man was up to. He replied calmly, "I have a fuel-air bomb. Do you want to give it a try?" "What?" Shiva did not say anything, but Todd was shocked. This was the difference between a military amateur and an expert. "You should be thankful that I crawled into the armor in time, or else it would be over for all of us," Fong Bujua said with a smile. "You madman, do you know what will happen if you explode something like that in the city?" Todd roared. "Good question," Fong Bujua replied. In the morning, the explosion at the Northern Pure Land factory was an experiment that Professor Fries and I completed together. Therefore, I have a very accurate estimation of the damage caused by the thing I'm carrying. Shiva interrupted. "Humph. No matter how convincing you sound, I will not believe you." When he said that, he sounded confident. Strapping a bomb on your body can indeed deter the characters in the scenario. Conversations like this will be blocked by the system, and the content heard by the NPC will be slightly different. However, for players like us, you're playing with fire. He raised his arm with his palm, facing up. We don't care what happens to a virtual city or how many people will die. The 7 stone plates moved slowly in the air, and without realizing it, they surrounded Fong Bujue. Using mutual destruction as your trump card and showing it at the start might work in a 1v1. But this is a free-for-all. Are you not afraid that I will really fight you here? Shiva asked. That's right. You're not afraid that I will really fight you here? Huh. Fong Bujue scoffed coldly. Based on the lineup of this killing game, I am the weakest on the surface. If I can take down any opponent with me, it will be a win for me. So why wouldn't I do it? As he spoke, he adjusted the freeze ray gun in his hand. For small characters like us, being able to kill the boss of Brahmin is definitely something to brag about. Shiva smiled. You have a point. Looks like I haven't considered the problem thoroughly enough. Before he could finish speaking, the stone plate of the heavenly hourglass launched another wave of attacks. Sharp beams of light struck the cold-blooded battle armor one after another from all angles. However, in front of a perfect grade defensive equipment, such an attack was simply trash. That's some firepower, Fong Bujue said. Looks like this is a sorcery weapon. The term sorcery weapon did not surprise Shiva that much, because someone had already posted about it on the forum. He merely replied calmly, Yes, this is called Heavenly Hourglass. Ever since I obtained this weapon, I have never lost in a one-on-one battle. I believe you won't change that. Is that so? Fong Bujue said. With this weapon that is as powerful as a rifle, can only fire 3 shots at a time, has a 1-minute gap between shots, and has a flying radius of less than 200 meters? Before Brother Jew finished, Shiva's terror points started to climb. Where did you get this data? Shiva asked with a serious expression. At that moment, he suspected that there was a traitor among the higher-ups of Brahmin. Otherwise, how could the man describe the 4 characteristics of Heavenly Hourglass so accurately? Observation, of course. As Fong Bujue spoke, he also fired. His movement was not fast, and he cannot be fast because the freeze pulse gun had the highest output. It looked like a fatter version of an M4A1, and its size was almost the size of a rocket launcher. The only way to hold the gun was to hold it before his chest, and when he raised the gun to fire, he had to turn his body sideways to aim the gun at the enemy. Using this thing to shoot at the enemy, the intention was obvious, and it gave the enemy enough time to prepare. Even a normal person would be able to evade it. However, even with so many obvious flaws, this was still Mr. Freeze's trump card, and the reason was simple. Boom! A bluish-white beam shot out from the barrel, and the sudden bright light lit up the night sky. Shiva moved quickly. In 2 seconds, he had moved more than 10 meters horizontally, evading the direct hit of the beam. However, the beam was persistent. It was like a water column used by a fire department to extinguish the fire. Fong Bujue only needed to hold down the trigger and turn the barrel, and the beam would chase after the target. The scariest thing was that not only would the area hit by the beam be frozen, before the attack ended, the freezing effect would spread at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, what Shiva had to dodge was not just a single beam, but a large group of moving AoE attacks. Chapter 288. In less than 10 seconds, the beam caught up to Shiva, and his whole body was frozen in ice. The ice was medium-sized, and it was like a coffin. It covered Shiva from head to toe. But that did not mean that Fong Bujue had won. The 7 stone plates of the Heavenly Hourglass split into 2. 3 stayed by Fong Bujue's side, while the other 4 flew back to Shiva. The 9 beams from the 3 stone plates shot out from the same angle, and they all hit the barrel of the freeze ray gun. The barrel of the gun was knocked away by the force, and it forced Fong Bujue to stop firing. The 12 beams of light from the other 4 stone plates shot out precisely at the ice that bound Shiva's limbs, shattering part of the ice. For Shiva, as long as he could move his limbs again, it was not hard to escape. He shattered the ice around him in a few moves and escaped from the area, flashing into a small alley. "You are very similar to me, Fong Bujua," Shiva said from behind the corner. Shiva, who was hiding behind the corner of the wall, said, "You can see through your opponent's skill with one glance and immediately understand what kind of fighting style will allow you to win. The player who is ranked second on the combat stat ranking has said something like that to me. Is that a compliment?" Fong Bujue replied as he moved forward, but since he was wearing the armor, he moved very slowly, and each step was loud. "To be complimented by someone like me, other than being happy, you should be afraid." As Shiva spoke, the 7 stone plates flew into the corner where he was hiding and temporarily escaped from Fong Bujue's sight. "Afraid? Huh? Why?" Fong Bujue laughed. "Is it that hard to understand?" Shiva said. "Then I will make it clearer." He paused for a moment. Having the talent to stand shoulder to shoulder with top-notch experts isn't necessarily a good thing, because, with a flash, he rushed out of the corner, a large hourglass floating beside him. On the same tyrannical path, there's no need for 2 tyrants. At this moment, a blue light appeared on the hourglass, and an overwhelming force gushed out. Seeing this, Fong Bujua knew that this was definitely one of the opponent's killing moves, and he could not be careless. However, he was currently wearing heavy armor, which made it difficult for him to move. Coupled with the fact that both of his hands were holding guns, he couldn't use death poker to defend himself. Thus, he decided to take it head-on. At least in terms of physical defense, the cold-blooded armor's defense was undoubtedly higher than shield. As long as the opponent didn't use any non-physical attacks, Fong Bujua was 70 to 80% sure that he could withstand it. But Shiva's attacks were mental attacks. He had already seen the defensive power of the cold-blooded armor and was also wary of the bombs on Fong Bujua's body. Under these 2 reasons, it was obviously unwise to use force to attack. Therefore, he used the water special effect of Heavenly Hourglass, cleansing. It ignored physical defense and launched a wave of mental erosion on an enemy, adding a cleansing status to the target for 30 seconds. Based on the target's terror points, a certain percentage of life points would be drained every second, no lower than 1%. After using it, the stone plate of water would shatter, and it would only recover after returning to the login lobby. From the player's perspective, even though Shiva could not tell the authenticity of the bombs, he was certain that the bomb would explode if one lost consciousness was a lie. When the player lost consciousness, it meant that they would dissolve into white light, and the items, bombs, on them would follow them out of the scenario. If the bombs could not be taken out of the scenario, as a consumable item that had nothing to do with the plot, they would stop working and return to their untouched state. They would be picked up by other players, and they would not explode. This setting was to prevent players who knew that they were about to die from setting traps before leaving the scenario to affect the later development of the scenario. Shiva, who was familiar with the rules, knew these details like the back of his hand. That was why he used the ultimate that he had planned to save for 7 kills on Fong Bujue. If this mental attack succeeded in killing his opponent, which Shiva believed had a high chance of success, he would not only get Mr. Freeze's armor and gun, he might even get the powerful fuel air explosive. Then, the use of cleansing would be worth it. "That is quite a good skill," Fong Bujue said in a strange tone. At that moment, Brother Ju's eyes were filled with shadows and strange sights. His ears were filled with ghostly wails and strange noises that would make one's hair stand on end. The effect of cleansing looked similar to the Scarecrow's poison gas, but they were actually 2 different approaches. The Scarecrow evoked the human's inner fear, while cleansing was the most direct fear, a physical stimulus that came from the outside. For example, when people heard the sound of nails scratching on glass, they would have goosebumps. That was because the frequency of the sound was high, and it would stimulate the eardrum, causing the brain to react accordingly. In a neural-connected game, even a stimulation that was beyond the normal 5 senses could be simulated by the system. When a normal person was hit by this skill, no matter how calm and rational they were, due to the physiological reaction, their terror points would rise. Under the influence of cleansing, most people would be unable to resist it. If one's terror point stayed at 50% for 10 seconds, their life points will be depleted, much less 30 seconds. Looking at Fong Bujue, who stood where he was, Shiva scoffed and said confidently, "Humph, it's over." He could not wait to open the game menu and wait for his opponent's status to turn to dead. In the end, he waited for 30 seconds. Half a minute later, Fong Bujue stood there perfectly fine and said, "That's it. Hey, 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 hey." The curses in Shiva's heart started to fly in the opposite direction again. You didn't die? How is that possible? Those who are hit by this skill won't die, even if they drink a health potion. I thought this skill would be so powerful. It only dropped 30% of my life points, and it took 30 seconds. Huh. Fong Bujue commented with condescension. The effect on the senses is not bad, but I'm wearing armor, and you didn't ambush me. In the end, it's still useless. Hearing that, Shiva's own terror points rose again. He thought, is this some kind of joke? There hasn't been anyone who survived from cleansing before. You only lost 30% of your life points? Isn't that the theoretical minimum? Is your terror points always 0? Are you really human? I'm so sorry. From the start of the scenario until now, I've underestimated you. I didn't expect someone like you to exist in this world. Shiva's eyes changed, and there was a seriousness that he had never seen before. Fong Bujue, facing an opponent of your level, I should use a different attitude. Oh, what is it? Before Fong Bujue finished, his expression shifted and his pupils dilated. Because at that moment, Shiva morphed into a shadow and charged at Fong Bujue with explosive speed. There was murderous intent on his face. An attitude that says, I will die together with you. Chapter 289. At this point in the battle, the fact that he said that proved that Shiva had acknowledged Fong Bujue's ability. Even though the man before him was not in the top 20 on the combat stat ranking and might not even be in the top 30, he already had the ability to compete with those who were in the top 10. Using the environment and rules of the scenario to come up with a strategy and execute it effectively to turn the tables around. This was a very normal and clever way of doing things. As long as one did not use external factors to cheat, there was nothing to criticize. After all, intelligence was part of one's ability. A strong person should have the tolerance of a strong person. They had to learn to recognize the strength of their opponent. Looking for excuses and consolation would not change the result. Using one's own method to defeat the opponent was what a strong person should do. As the #1 character in Brahmin and one of the strongest players in the gaming world, Shiva naturally had the mentality of a strong person. The mental attack, just now, was already his trump card. Since this move failed, he gave up on the idea of winning without detonating the bomb. At that moment, Shiva had already acknowledged Fong Bujue's ability. He believed that dying together with an opponent of this level was not that humiliating. Therefore, Shiva stopped worrying about whether the bomb on his opponent was real or fake. He started to attack with all his might and tried to destroy his opponent on a physical level. Fong Bujue, on the other hand, had a bad feeling. He analyzed the man's eyes, words, and actions, and the message he got was, even if I detonate the bomb, I will kill you. This was the situation that Fong Bujue did not want to see because the bomb strapped to his body was real. Brother Ju was the weakest player in this killing game. His advantage was that these big characters did not want to die together with him. After King of Shadows and Understanding Death died one after another, the chances of the other players obtaining the final victory had undoubtedly increased. They should cherish their lives even more. Fong Bujue really didn't expect that this guy who was ranked second on the battle power ranking was actually prepared to fight with him. I say, don't be too impulsive. Once the bomb explodes, the two of us will definitely be finished. You're the boss of the gods, and I'm just a nobody. As Fong Bujue was trying to persuade him, he realized that his feet were slowly leaving the ground. The heavy cold-blooded armor, the dozens of kilograms of freeze pulse gun, and Fong Bujue, who was inside the armor, all floated towards the sky. Shiva interrupted Fong Bujue and coldly laughed. It does not matter. I think, with your power, It will not take long before you become as famous as I am." When Fong Bujua heard this, his heart sank. It seemed that the other party was not bluffing. Name: weightless contact, special ability type. Active consumption, 20% of maximum stamina points effect, causes a hole that is touched to float in the air. Cooldown time is 1 hour. Lasts for 1 minute. The target has to be smaller than 20 cubic meters, and it cannot be oneself. Remark: if you're good at fighting games, it will be easy to understand. Infinite floating means infinite combos. This skill was given to him by Shiva's title, Master of Field Control. He obtained this title with his usual calmness and ease. In team mode, a teammate like Shiva was undeniably the anchor of the team. For a player of his level, the psychological support he provided to his team was something that could not be measured by data. As long as he was nearby, even if he did not do anything, his teammates would feel much safer. For example, if there were 2 youth football teams in a match, one team had Ferguson in the coach's seat, and the other team had Camacho in the coach's seat. Then, when the game reached a stalemate, or there was an accidental loss of points, which side would panic? Then, there's no other way. Fong Bujua tried his best to adjust his body's angle in midair. 5 seconds later, he adjusted the freeze ray gun's muzzle to point downward. But before he fired, turn on the ice, Shiva's position had changed. Even so, Fong Bujua still pulled the trigger, and the beam shot out. After all, this was an AoE attack. As long as he aimed, it was fine if he missed. Humph! This kind of attack is too difficult. Shiva had experience in dodging, so he retreated far away. But that was not Fong Bujua's intention. With the push of the pulse beam, Brother Ju was propelled into the sky like a rocket, and he flew very high up into the sky. Oh, so that's how it is. Ha! I really can't let my guard down. Shiva laughed and took out a rocket launcher from his backpack. Fong Bujua soon rose to a height of about 100 meters. He could clearly see the enemy raising the RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, to aim at him, but it was impossible for him to dodge in zero gravity. This is not good. If I'm hit by an anti-tank weapon, even the armor won't be able to withstand it. Fong Bujua said, once the external defense is broken, the fire and explosion will rush in. Even if I don't die, the fuel air bomb will explode. Goodbye. Shiva was far away from the freeze ray gun. He quickly locked onto the target and fired the rocket. To explain how the RPG worked, when it was fired, the gunpowder in the chamber was ignited, and the rocket was propelled forward. The rocket initially moved at 117 meters per second. After 0.1 seconds, about 11 meters, the rocket engine started and the stabilizing fins opened. The rocket started to spin, and it would accelerate to 294 meters per second until it hit the target. In comparison, Fong Bujua's movement speed was not even worth mentioning. Furthermore, he was inside the heavy armor, and he had no leverage in zero gravity. It was difficult for him to adjust the angle of the gun, so using the freeze ray gun to stop the rocket was unrealistic. Just as the outcome was about to be decided, another change happened. Unexpectedly, a bat dart interfered and accurately hit the warhead just as the rocket left the launcher and before it accelerated to its maximum speed, causing it to detonate. But now, Fong Bujua was unharmed, and Shiva had lost quite a bit of life point from the explosion before him. Anger rose in Shiva's heart, and he lifted his head to glare in the direction the bat dart came from. Jason Todd had moved several times, and he was standing on the roof of a building next to Shiva. The low voice said again, "Idiot, if the fuel air bomb on him explodes in midair, 1/3 of Gotham will be destroyed, and both you and I will die here. You want to stop me?" Shiva had the parts of the heavenly hourglass fly toward Todd. "Then you'll die first." Instantly, the 6 stone plates attacked at the same time, and the light beam shot at Todd from different angles. A shadow appeared, and the 2 swords in his hands danced. The red and blue flames drew out a series of blinding sword shadows in the air, and they shattered all the light beams that came from the stone plates. "TSK, mind your own business," Todd grumbled. The angel of death stood next to him and said with a hint of sarcasm, There's no need to thank me." At the same time, there were two whooshing sounds, and two gusts of wind flew at Shiva. Shiva reacted quickly and flipped backward, barely dodging them. He turned around and saw that two net bullets had brushed past him and hit a building on the side of the street. The screeching of brakes followed, and a legendary Batmobile appeared from the direction the nets came from. With a drift, it stopped about 20 meters away from Shiva. One had to admit that the car was very cool. Its appearance could be described as low-key beauty and hidden savagery. When it drove out from the darkness, it gave off a strong presence and presence. The door opened, and Master Damian, fifth Robin, son of Bruce Wayne and Talia, son of a biological son, and Squire, Knight's follower, Squire during the Battle of the Cowl, real heroine named Hutchinson, jumped out from the car. "Visitors from another dimension, you'd better surrender now," Damian said. Shiva smiled coldly and reloaded the rocket launcher with another rocket. "We've captured one of your accomplices. I believe you know him," Squire said as she opened the back door of the Batmobile. There was a beauty sitting in the back seat, but Shiva did not recognize her. However, he soon realized that this girl who was dressed weirdly and had an Asian face should be a player. Other than not a scaredy cat, who else could she be? "Ha ha!" Shiva laughed. When Not a Scaredy Cat saw this, her expression shifted. She instantly understood the man's intention, and she screamed, "Let me out!" Whoosh! Boom! The rocket launcher fired, and the Batmobile was blasted into the sky. Damian and Squire rolled out and escaped the explosion, but Not a Scaredy Cat was unlucky. Her hands were tied, and her body was pinned to the seat. Before she could finish her sentence, she was sent back to the login lobby. A real man would never turn around to look at an explosion. So after the rocket was fired, Shiva turned around and headed toward Fong Bujue. I've told you many times, Shiva finally entered a murderous state. I'm not on their side. At that moment, the effect of weightless contact ended, and Fong Bujue was falling rapidly. Shiva loaded, aimed, and fired in one go. While the heroes were still in a daze from his atrocity, another rocket was fired. The tail of the rocket left a trail of white smoke behind it, and it drew a long arc in the air. Under the moonlight, it flew into the night sky, and before everyone's eyes, it hit the cold-blooded armor. Chapter 290. Going back in time, when Shiva aimed and fired the first RPG, Fong Bujue, who was in midair, did not know that Todd would use the bat dart to block the attack for him. In that moment, from Brother Ju's perspective, this attack would definitely take his life. Therefore, Fong Bujue made a quick decision. He opened the hatch connecting the helmet and back of the armor and escaped from it as fast as he could. His plan was to hide behind the armor and not take the hit from the inside. That way, when the armor exploded, he could activate the special effect of shield. With the armor and skill, the damage to his body would be minimized, and he could use the force of the explosion to fly away from the center of the explosion. That was not a bad strategy, but who would have thought that Todd would use the bat dart to block the first RPG? The fire and smoke from the explosion blocked Shiva's sight, and Todd's attention was not on Fong Bujue. Furthermore, it was night, and the street was brighter than the sky. Therefore, no one noticed that the interior of the cold-blooded armor was empty, and Fong Bujue was hiding behind the armor. Back to the present. The heroes from the network did not waste too much of Shiva's time. In fact, they gave him a big present and sold out Sister Not a Scaredy Cat. However, her death was not an unjust one. If she had not run into the heroes of the DC universe who did not kill much, but had been chased by an NPC force in another scenario, she might have died on the spot, and there would have been no chance of her surviving. However, this small interlude had exhausted the duration of Weightless Touch. Fong Bujue, who had nowhere to go and could only grab the armor, fell back into the embrace of gravity and fell with the armor. At this moment, Shiva's third rocket flew through the air. In the blink of an eye, a crimson figure stepped on the armor, pushing the heavy armor in the direction of the rocket, and flew out like an arrow from a bow. With a boom, there was a flash of fire. The armor and the freeze ray gun were destroyed in midair, and the burning pieces fell to the ground. As strong as the explosion was, Bujua was not caught in the blast and landed safely on the roof of a building about 10 meters away. The exhaustion from the body enhancement spell, the damage from the fall, and the loss of life points from the battle with Todd and Shiva forced Bujua to drink a life points recovery potion. Thankfully, this was the first time he had drunk a potion since entering the scenario, so the 50% effect did not decrease, and his life points returned to 80%. However, the scene of Bujua jumping away from the armor did not escape Shiva's eyes, and the status in the game menu showed that he was still alive. Therefore, Shiva's pursuit was far from over. He quickly put away the RPG, and with a powerful kick, he leaped up to the height of the 3-story building. Then he used one arm to grab onto the water pipe on the outer wall of the building by the roadside. Using the wall as leverage, he climbed up the wall and reached the rooftop of the 6th floor in a few seconds. Looking down, Bujua was still in his sight. Shiva smirked coldly, and without a word, he started to run. He jumped up and down the roof of the city like it was flat ground. He did not forget to use the heavenly hourglass to cover his retreat. With the cover from the stone plates, the superheroes who had caught up to the roof were soon left behind. "What do you think you're going?" Shiva roared excitedly. At that moment, he was more excited than he had ever been before. In this battle, he had tasted something that he had not tasted for a long time: the joy of battle. Shiva had been a top player for quite some time. He had entered the industry when he was just 10 years old, and he had been in the professional circle for more than 10 years. In this industry, when one skill reached a certain level, the joy of battle would decrease. First, the opponents he faced were usually a fixed group of people. The circle of top players was only so big. For example, when War 3 was at its peak, there were many competitions, and when he reached the top 16, he would see a group of good friends. They had fought against each other many times, and some were even teammates from the same club. Secondly, before the battle started, experts would have an accurate prediction of the outcome. In PK games with differences between professions, the moment two people met, they would observe the other's race, profession, talent, and equipment, and they would immediately know who had the advantage. At this time, if the opponent was an old opponent, would there be any suspense? Take the battle between Shiva and Understanding Death as an example. There was no passion in the battle. Both of them were professional players, and they had fought against each other many times in other games. They had a more objective evaluation of each other's fighting style and gaming skill. As top-notch experts, they naturally couldn't place their hopes on luck, coincidence, unforced mistakes, and other factors. These were all within the scope of wishful thinking. Thinking like, my character crit every time, and the guy on the other side accidentally spilled instant noodles on the keyboard, was a luxury that only casual players could have. If professional players kept thinking like this, they wouldn't be far off from beating their own balls to commit suicide. Therefore, even though Understanding Death was unwilling to accept the outcome of the battle, he was still mentally prepared for the outcome of his defeat. What he did not expect was that, in Thriller Paradise, the gap between him and Shiva would grow even bigger. On Shiva's side, he did not show much joy because it was natural for him to win. Just like in a tennis match, if the first seed beat the 5th seed in the elimination round, he would not show much joy after the match. That was Shiva's mentality. Even though the price he paid during the battle was higher than he expected, it was still within his acceptable range. But at that moment, this unknown player called Bujua gave Shiva a sense of novelty that he had not felt in a long time. Because in the battle with this kid, he had no idea what would happen next. He is weak, really weak. His level is low, and his physical fitness and equipment are only above average. His fighting style is normal as well. He is far from being a professional player. So far, he has only used 2 skills. One is a skill that increases the stamina of physical skills. It probably consumes a lot of stamina, so he always uses it instantly and then stops. The other is the punch that landed on Todd's arm, but it is not that powerful. Furthermore, he has a bomb strapped to his body. If not for Mr. Freeze's armor, he would have been dead already, Shiva grumbled internally. But why is my instinct telling me that he still has a chance of winning? Shiva, who had great fighting instinct, after a short observation in battle, had seen through Fong Bujue, but this only deepened his confusion. Even if I go all out and fight with the mentality that it is fine to detonate the bomb, I cannot see any chance of winning. My advantage is obvious. If I was in his position, I might not have been able to fight to this stage, he thought. Humph, I think I understand it now. Perhaps the Shadow King has really lost to this kid. Who? Suddenly, a white light came from the front and aimed right at his face. Shiva reacted quickly. He tilted his head to evade, but he did not slow down. Oh, more than one. He touched his left cheek, and the skin that was grazed by the light was left with a streak of frost. Of course, Fong Bujue had more than one freeze ray gun. He had a low-powered one in his inventory. This one was about the size of a pistol, and it looked very cartoonish. Item name: freeze ray gun, low-powered. Item type: weapon quality, excellent. Offense points, none. Element: eye special effect, freeze the target. Equip requirement: marksmanship. It can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. When fired, it can only freeze objects the size of a basketball. When fired continuously, the freezing effect will spread around the target. After the energy is depleted, it will need to be recharged. The weapons, equipment, and consumables that he got from Mr. Freeze could not be taken out of the scenario. Fong Bujue tried a few things from Two-Face, but be it weapons, potions, or apparel, they could not be taken out of the scenario. Before he left, he even asked Two-Face, "Can you give me that coin that you've been tossing as a souvenir?" But this time, Two-Face did not toss the coin, but took out a machine gun to shoot at him. In any case, Fong Bujue predicted that in this scenario, anything that was taken from the main characters or was related to them could not be brought back to the login lobby. Now that he thought about it, it did make sense. A Batman suit could be sold for 2 million RMB in the market. If the items in this scenario could be taken out so easily, then the 6 of them would stop fighting. They would go loot the Batcave and force their way out. Don't push me too far. I have a real bomb strapped to my body. Seeing the man closing in, Fong Bujue was anxious. He was already in body enhancement spell. If he still could not widen the distance, there was no way he could continue this fight. Do you think I still care about something like that? Shiva laughed. Fine, fine. Fong Bujue sighed helplessly. As he ran, he started to remove the bomb. Thankfully, he was not wearing a bomb vest. After all, he could not wear the vest even if he wanted to. The bomb was mainly carried by the belt, so it was easy to remove. The detonator had not been taken out from the backpack, so Fong Bujue shoved the bomb into the backpack as well. Humph! Looks like the one who is afraid of dying together with us is you. Shiva's eyes narrowed. When a normal person enters this scenario and sees names like me, understanding death, and 7 kills, they would think that the chance of winning is slim. He paused for a moment. But you, from the very beginning, you never considered losing. You don't fear us so-called big shots at all. You know that you're very weak in terms of strength, but in terms of mentality, you've always placed yourself in an equal position with us in an attempt to win. As they spoke, the distance between the two shrunk to about 15 meters. This is what it means to underestimate the enemy strategically and respect the enemy strategically, Fong Bujue said as he turned back to fire 2 more shots. Due to the close distance, Shiva did not have much time to react, so the 2 shots managed to force him back about 5 meters. Humph! A futile attempt to buy time. How long can this skill of yours last? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Shiva grumbled. I still have plenty of stamina points. Fong Bujue glanced at the menu. Indeed, he could not hold on much longer. He had been running for 2 minutes, and his life points were dropping at a rate of 2% every 5 seconds. His life points were not full to begin with, and now it had dropped below 30%. In another minute, it would drop to single digits. Then, there would be the danger of tripping and falling to his death. Huh, you must be joking. Fong Bujue boasted shamelessly and replied confidently. In this state, I can even run a marathon. Ha ha ha. He laughed like a madman. Believe it or not, I can finish the Alaskan sled dog race with my legs. 1,600 kilometers is just the distance from my bedroom to the toilet. Chapter 291. This kind of statement could not even be considered a bluff. Of course, Fong Bujue did not expect the man to believe him. He was just joking. Shiva laughed at this nonsense and treated it as a joke. In such an urgent situation, you still have the mood to show off your sense of humor. Huh, I guess that is one of your strengths. No, from a psychological perspective, I'm building a psychological defense line, Fong Bujue replied. At the same time, he fired another freeze pulse. Is that so? This is the first time I've heard of such a thing. Shiva easily dodged it. Because I made it up. Fong Bujue continued. As long as you mention the word psychology, it sounds very high-end. You don't understand it, but you think it's cool, don't you? Humph. The joke ends here. As Shiva spoke, his gaze changed. The next second, the 6 stone plates of the heavenly hourglass appeared one after another. They caught up from behind and flew around Fong Bujue, moving in the same direction as him. This sorcery weapon had a weakness that Fong Bujue did not notice. It was just that when these stone plates left the line of sight of the controller, they would become less sensitive. During this chase, Shiva had to focus on the front, so the stone plates had only just caught up. Even though they were late, at least they had caught up. The appearance of the stone plates basically signaled the end of the chase. Fong Bujue also understood that there was no point in continuing to run. He could not be faster than these flying objects. The only thing he could do now was to turn back and fight. However, he had lost the protection of the cold-blooded armor, and the body enhancement spell was not a long-term solution. How could he fight the player who was ranked second on the combat ranking? He did not have time to think about this problem because the first wave of light was coming. At that moment, Fong Bujue came to a sudden stop. He bent his knees, kicked his legs, and shot backward. He closed in on Shiva with his back to him and elbowed him. Fong Bujue's move was to achieve victory by surprise. Usually, under such circumstances, the chased person would dodge to the side or diagonally. However, Fong Bujue chose to launch a surprise attack from the rear, turning defense into offense and attacking from behind. But who was Shiva? He could dodge the beam from the freeze ray gun. How could he not react to melee attacks? A moment later, a cracking sound was heard. Fong Bujue's arm was fractured. Shiva chose to use his fist to take on the elbow, but to his surprise, even his fist was fractured. Looks like your fighting ability is not as bad as I thought. Shiva calmly pulled back his hand, turned to the side, and followed up with a spin kick. After being hit, Fong Bujue's body stopped in midair, but the inertia from before did not disappear. He saw Shiva's follow-up move and reacted immediately. Using the force from the punch, he forced his body to spin in midair. Using the remaining inertia, he twisted in the direction of the kick. Shiva did not expect Fong Bujue to do something like that. Brother Ju used this strange dodging skill to brush past Shiva and land behind his opponent. If not for the fact that I saw someone do it, I would not have thought that a spinning kick could be dodged like that. Shiva smiled. Interesting, this is getting more and more interesting. Shiva suddenly realized that Fong Bujue's fighting skill was not that bad. It looked like when he was fighting Todd earlier, he did not use it because he had the bomb strapped to his body. Actually, even Fong Bujue himself did not know how he did it. This kind of lucky move would definitely fail if he tried it again. If it's interesting, then let's continue. Fong Bujue said as he used the skill, TA, that had just finished its cooldown, and he chose Fighting Mastery. After the fight, Fong Bujue estimated Shiva's physical skill level. He was at least 30% stronger than Fong Bujue with body enhancement spell activated. With this kind of difference, and the opponent having a powerful sorcery weapon, removing the buff would be suicide. Therefore, Fong Bujue used his skill first to temporarily suppress the opponent. At least, he would have the time to drink a health potion to maintain body enhancement spell. Of course, in that exchange, Shiva had paid a price. Fong Bujue's left elbow was broken, and Shiva's right fist did not fare well either. After all, the elbow was thicker than the fist. After that clash, Shiva's right hand's fingers, wrist, and palm are all damaged. They were either broken or cracked. Even though this was a game and the sense of pain was weakened, the human instinct to protect their body was hard to overcome. It was like a blister on one's skin. Everyone knew they should pop it, but when they really did it, it was hard to do it cleanly. No matter how much virtual combat experience Shiva had, he had not reached the stage where he had no fear of death and was neither a ghost nor a god but a demon. Therefore, his instinct helped him make the choice. He used his left hand, which was relatively weaker, to counter Fong Bujue's attack with his fist. In that fleeting moment, Shiva was still careful and added a skill to his fist. The skill itself was very weak. It was a skill that he had obtained many times when he was low level. It had been stored in his skill bar, and there was only one use left. The effect was only to increase the strength of his punch by 20%. On the surface, it did not look like it would make a difference whether he used the skill or not, but instinct told Shiva that Fong Bujue's attack was probably a trap. Earlier, Todd had been in a similar situation. He had thought that he had the advantage in terms of strength, so he had tried to block, but he had been injured. Shiva did not want to repeat the same mistake. He was willing to add something that was not important just in case. This was the difference between a top expert and a normal expert. It was the same in all fields. The details decided the outcome. Many small details would accumulate to form a huge difference. To become the top, one had to be perfect. Bang! The collision of fist and palm created a dull thud like two beasts crashing into each other. 2 seconds later, Shiva's cold face that was half covered by his long hair was shocked. He could clearly feel a tyrannical force pouring into his left arm. His bones were shattered one by one. The skills he added were swallowed up by this force like a small boat in the middle of a huge wave. How is this possible? Shiva gasped. Fong Bujue could not answer him because even Brother Ju did not know what kind of skill it was. If he knew, he would have exclaimed that he was lucky to have randomly obtained a high-level consumable active skill at such a crucial moment. Name: Tiger Pushing Mountain, Iron Palm 5th Style, Skill Property. Active skill disappears after one use. Skill type: Fighting effect. Heavily injure the target with the force of the palm. Consumption: 50% of maximum stamina points learning requirement. Fighting Dirimark. Iron Palm comes from the Xianxi Iron Palm clan. It is extremely powerful. Those who are hit will die on the way to the hospital due to their internal organs being shattered. The 5th style, Fierce Tiger, pushes the mountain. When you start, you stand naturally, gather your chi in your dantian, place your arm in front of your chest, and strike out with your palm from top to bottom. Let out a high sound as you exhale to assist your chi. The wind from your palm is withdrawn as soon as it is released. The intention is to turn your palm into 1,000 layers, and the force penetrates the enemy's back. Ha ha! Are you afraid now? Fong Bujue said with arrogance. This is the 2nd style of storming wave palm, the toppling mountains and overturning seas. Regardless of what he said, he was very smart. It was necessary to know when to stop. No matter how the other party reacted, he would jump to the back first and increase the distance between them. I also know blue ocean transverse current, turbulent waves, undercurrent surge, 100 rivers into the sea, white waves overflowing sky, great waves washing sand, hidden tides undercurrent, overturning rivers and seas, mountains called tsunamis, roaring waves of the 9 heavens, calm waves, drying seas and rocks, blood sea and sky, one color of the sea and sky. He finished speaking in one breath, without a single thump, as if he was performing a crosstalk. Enough, 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 Shiva repeated 3 times. He quickly swallowed a bottle of life points recovery potion, large, and used a universal recovery. This item was bought from Thriller Paradise, and its effect was similar to the item in Pokemon. Stop talking nonsense. You and I both know that even if you can occasionally throw out attacks like this, you still won't be able to beat me. He paused. Let's make a deal. If you surrender now, you'll help me save some potions. After the scenario is over, Brother Fong, if you do me the honor, I'll reserve a spot for you as one of the main players in Brahmin. How about that? What? Fong Bujue's reaction was one of annoyance. He immediately took out Mad Moxie's bad temper and the low-power freeze ray gun. He put them back in his inventory before he turned around to elbow Shiva. He held them in each hand and said, "Do I look like someone who would submit to someone else?" "You're Beep." Shiva was angered, and he roared, "Yes, you are." Fong Bujue's lips curled into a wicked smile. Shiva was startled when he heard that, and he thought to himself, F***CK? How did he know that the words that were blocked by the system were the word crazy? Phew! Shiva took a deep breath and said darkly, "Don't think that I'm afraid of you. Of course, you're not afraid of me. You just think that things are getting troublesome." Fong Bujue had seen through the man. "If this continues, you won't have the energy to deal with 7 kills. Is that what you're thinking? I advise you to stop messing around. Da-da-da. Chio-chio." Before Shiva could finish, Fong Bujue fired both guns. Ha-ha! Fong Bujue laughed madly again. "You say no, but your body is telling the truth. Ha-ha! What the F***CK? Shiva rolled to find cover and evade the bullets, and he sighed from the bottom of his heart. The system didn't even block such dirty language. Chapter 292. He was a complete lunatic. That was Shiva's impression of Fong Bujue. "I've miscalculated." Shiva hid behind a cover and mumbled between breaths. Who would have thought that the one who would decide the result of this killing game would not be understanding death or the Shadow King, but this Fong Bujue who came out of nowhere? Being heavily injured by Fong Bujue earlier had completely disrupted Shiva's plan. Since he entered the scenario, he had used the life points recovery potion more than 4 times. Initially, he had planned to use the 4th potion after he killed Fong Bujue, but he did not plan to use it. But before the battle was over, he was forced to drink it. The difference between the former and the latter could be said to be the difference of 1,000 miles. Using the same recovery potion multiple times within a certain period of time would greatly decrease the amount of recovery. This could be said to be one of the darker settings in the game. Even if the player was rich and bought a large inventory and a large number of potions, when it came to actual combat, they would only have the first few potions that would be of use. Before the end of the battle, every additional bottle of blood he drank was equivalent to pushing his bottom line a little bit further. And that was the thing that Shiva did not want to do. Because from the moment Fong Bujue removed the bomb, Shiva's mentality had changed. He saw the hope of victory again, and his earlier passion slowly cooled down. After thinking about it calmly, he understood that the reward of this scenario was not something that could be sought. Shiva believed that with his ability, if he obtained a piece of perfect equipment, he would be able to climb to the top of the combat stat ranking. At the current stage, perfect quality equipment in Thriller Paradise was extremely valuable. There were no more than 5 of them in the auction house, and each of them was sold at a sky-high price. There were quite a few in the Thriller box, but the players did not have enough purchasing power. Every day, there would be complaints on the gaming forum, saying that the Thriller box had become a museum. The players could not afford the best items, and the players were unwilling to buy the items that were not as good. This was because most of the players wanted to save up some skill points to buy a divine item or something. Although Shiva was the player ranked 2nd on the combat strength leaderboard, ignoring his level and talents, he only had a full set of excellent grade equipment, a bunch of skills, and enough supplies. The bonuses provided by the clothing were negligible. As the leader of a gaming studio and a top player who had been the pro scene for many years, he knew better than anyone what it meant to be first on the combat stat ranking. Just like Shankly said, first place was first place, and second place was nothing. Cruel truth, perhaps it was one-sided, but he agreed. Phantom Dawn, with the suffix of regulation, every moment he was at the top of the ranking, he was an invisible resource. If the perfect equipment could help Shiva surpass the man, then the victory in this killing game will be far more meaningful than a scenario, a piece of equipment, or even a difference in ranking. Because of that, Shiva had tried to compromise with Fong Bujue earlier. However, he did not expect that the other party would suddenly become unreasonable. Shiva reevaluated Fong Bujue's behavior and realized that he could no longer use logic to analyze the man. The man was clever, but he was also ridiculous. He was sometimes extremely careful, but at other times, he was extremely rash. He would come up with a convincing and accurate analysis, but he would also say crazy things that were beyond the imagination of others. This kind of opponent that could not be judged with logic made Shiva feel more troubled than he had ever felt before. Your sorcery weapon sure is convenient, Feng Bujue said as he leaped several meters to dodge the light beams from the stone plates. This wave of attacks was a cover fire. When Shiva found cover, it slightly suppressed Feng Bujue's firepower. Your sleuthing mastery is not bad. Even without using your eyes, you can see the general situation around you, Feng Bujue said. But after leaving your sight, the accuracy of the stone plates have decreased. As he spoke, he pulled the string of a grenade and threw it at the place where the other party was hiding. Don't push your luck. Shiva did not need to look to know that something was coming at him. He took out a cold weapon from his inventory and swatted the grenade into the air like a baseball. The explosion in the air was like a signal. Following the boom, Shiva leaped out from the other side of the cover and headed toward Feng Bujue at high speed. However, as soon as he came out, he was met with layers upon layers of golden light flying towards him. Skill? No. Sorcery weapon. Shiva's battle instinct reacted instantly. He won't be able to guess where I'll come from. At most, he'll be able to predict my movement. So, this sorcery weapon is meant to follow me. Several thoughts flashed through his mind, and the light card was inches away. Scatter. Shiva roared and used his skill. Name: Spirit Breaker Strike. Skill card attribute: active, permanent, skill type. Fighting effect: deliver a shockwave imbued with spiritual energy. Cooldown of 3 minutes. Requires wielder to wield a cold weapon. Consumption: 200 stamina points, 20 sorcery points. Learning requirement: Fighting E. Sorcery He remark. The damage to physical targets, like machinery, is very weak, but the effect on targets imbued with spiritual energy or soul is obvious. The choice of skill was perfect, and the weapon in Shiva's hand was perfect for this skill. Name: Obsidian Hammer. Item type: weapon. Quality: excellent. Offense points: medium element. None special effect. Exorcism equip requirement: Fighting D, level 23 and above. Remark: Obsidian is one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. When you run into evil spirits, you can use brute force to destroy them. Whenever he ran into a haunted scenario, Shiva's trick worked every time. With the exception of bosses and elite-level monsters, anything that was related to spirits would be instantly killed by this combination. The death poker that Feng Bujue tossed out was a total of 10 cards, the combination of airplane and cannon. The consumption was high, so naturally it was powerful. But this time, Shiva was trying to kill a chicken with a sledgehammer, so he used his main skill. Comparing the two, Shiva's reaction was stronger. Bang! A strange sound was heard as the light plate was smashed into colorful light fragments in midair. It then exploded and scattered like sparks. Shiva successfully blocked the attack, and Feng Bujue was forced into a corner. Even though Shiva was stopped by the death poker, as Feng Bujue returned to his sight, Shiva's sorcery weapon could aim accurately again. Therefore, the second Shiva shattered the cards. 6 beams of light shot at Feng Bujue from 6 different directions: front, back, left, right, front, and back. The angle of this round of attacks was tricky, and they surrounded him. Brother Bujue had nowhere to run. If he did not die, he would be heavily injured. Chi! 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 The beams of light cut through the air, leaving several holes in the cement of the rooftop and breaking 2 of the railings. But Feng Bujue was fine. He used an indescribable and unbelievable movement to dodge all the beams of light. At that moment, all the joints in his body seemed to be loose, but the movement of his limbs and torso was still fast and powerful. If one had to describe it, imagine an extremely nimble marionette. With the pull of the strings, it could twist its joints and change its posture at high speed. But for a normal person to mimic this kind of movement, it was impossible. Nana! If Shiva was a villain in a Japanese comic, he would have shouted this line with a face full of shock. But he was not. Even if he was surprised, he was not stunned. Shiva's attack had not ended. The beams of light from the stone plate were all on cooldown after a few rounds, but it had bought him a lot of space to maneuver. At that moment, Shiva's life points were at 90%, and he had half of his stamina points left. He still had 2 fighting skills that he could use at any time, and he had successfully reached Feng Bujue. On Feng Bujue's side, with the exhaustion from the body enhancement spell, his life points had dropped below 40% again, and his stamina points were only at 188-2800. He had put away his guns, and he was holding death poker, which was not good for close-quarter combat. What's going on? This sentence was actually coming from Feng Bujue himself. I really dodged it. With a whoosh, the obsidian hammer came swinging at him. Feng Bujue took a step to the side and leaned back like he was stretching. He easily dodged it. This is crazy. Have I unlocked my conception and governor vessels? Shouldn't I be the one asking these questions? As Shiva spoke, he used another skill. This time, he used his leg. A blue shadow in the shape of a blade was kicked out by Shiva, and it flew toward Feng Bujue, who was 1 meter away from him. Is this the legendary Renkyaku? Feng Bujue mumbled to himself as he mimicked the classic bullet-dodging action from the Matrix. He leaned back, bent his knees, and barely dodged the attack. Kid, are you pretending to be weak? Shiva roared angrily. He had no idea where his anger came from. When he calmed down and thought about it, his anger was probably because he realized that his opponent's physical skill was stronger than his own. How am I supposed to answer that question? Feng Bujue asked. Brother Ju was also thinking about the answer. I thought it was a coincidence that I dodged the spinning kick, but now it looks like that is not the case. The beam of light, the hammer, and the kick, are they purely the effects of body enhancement spell? Or has the opponent's movement slowed down? No, the difference between us is still there. Be it strength, speed, or motion vision, he is slightly stronger than me. But, for some reason, I seem to be able to do some extremely difficult actions that only exist in my imagination, and I can do them very accurately. What kind of phenomenon is this? Have I gained some kind of game buff that is not shown in the status bar? That does not look like it. This kind of realm where one can do whatever they want. Could it be? While he was thinking, Shiva put away the obsidian hammer, freed up his hands, and launched a series of high-intensity attacks. Instantly, shadows of punches filled the sky, and the wind blew. 2 shadows, one attacking and one defending, one advancing and one retreating, fought their way out of the rooftop of the building. They walked vertically down the wall of the building and fought from the sky to the street. The superheroes who had been left behind had already rushed over one after another. Jason Todd did not follow. He was not with the heroes of the network, so he had quietly retreated. Seeing the scene in front of them, the friends of the network were all stunned. Should we consider contacting the headquarters of the Justice League? The squire gave a very pertinent suggestion. Damien glanced at her, picked up the walkie-talkie, and replied woodenly, I'll ask Saint. Chapter 293. Sage, can you hear me? Sage? Damien yelled into the communicator several times, but there was no answer. He thought to himself, is my communicator broken? Damien. Suddenly, Nightwing's voice came from the other end. Hey, what's going on, Dick? Where's Sage? Damien asked. Someone ambushed the Batcave, Nightwing replied. What? Not only Damien, but the servant beside him was shocked as well. Don't worry, Sage and Alfred are fine. They were just tied up, Nightwing said. Then what about the Batcave? How was the damage? Damien asked. Nightwing hesitated for a few seconds before replying. From the looks of it, the other party did not cause much damage. My devices did not find any bombs or bugs. He paused for a moment and said in a strange tone, It's just that person stole a whole set of Batsuit and Bruce's cape. After dying together with Darkseid, Superman and Wonder Girl sent the cape that Batman wore before he died back to the Batcave. Nightwing is referring to this one. Do you know who did it? Damien asked. Who else? Of course, it's a traveler from another dimension, Nightwing replied. Is there anything we can help you with? Damien asked. Not yet, Nightwing replied. What's the situation on your side? Oh, I'm not sure if that's a good thing, Damien replied. The John Doe has gotten into a fight with the traveler from another dimension who controls the stone plate. He dragged out the last syllable. Looks like they're both superpowered criminals, and they're hard to deal with. We're considering calling for backup from the Justice League. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't call for help from other heroes, Nightwing said. I'll help Barbara and Alfred settle down, and I'll be back soon to help you. Before that, let them fight. Understood. On the other side, the battle between Shiva and Feng Bujue had reached its climax. Humph! You can't keep it up anymore, can you? Shiva astutely noticed that the red aura around Feng Bujue had disappeared. This meant that the skill that was used to increase his physical attributes had stopped. It's not to the point where we have to stop. Feng Bujue naturally knew that Shiva was referring to body enhancement spell. He smiled and said, but I don't think there's a need to use that anymore. Is that so? Shiva said as he launched another combo. I have to thank you for your continuous high-intensity attacks. Feng Bujue retreated and dodged as he said indifferently. It allowed me to adapt to this new ability in a very short time. At this point, he suddenly flashed and appeared behind his opponent. Now that I can keep up with the rhythm of this battle, it's fine even without the assistance of that skill. A new ability? Shiva laughed. Humph, what a joke. You haven't gotten any equipment, you haven't gotten any skills, and you haven't drunk any buff potions. What ability did you obtain in this battle? He turned around and kicked again. Are you trying to tell me what kind of martial arts mantra you've comprehended in the game? You might not understand even if I tell you. Feng Bujue leaned slightly to the side and looked at the leg that flew past him with a dispirited gaze. You can take your time to study it after you return to the login lobby. He grabbed Shiva's ankle with one hand and used the force from the kick to fling him toward a lamppost by the side of the street. Bang! Crack! Shiva's back slammed into the lamppost, and the iron pole that was as thick as a bowl broke. Only he knew how much pain he was in. The only thing he was thankful for was that he was in the right position when he slammed into the pole. The armor protected his torso, so his spine was not broken. So this is Soul's Eye, Feng Bujue thought to himself. He had a complicated feeling in his heart. He had a feeling that he had wasted his previous level of 28. If I had mastered this earlier, perhaps I would have been able to take down the GMs as well. Shiva stood up again, and the 6 stone plates gathered around him. He had subconsciously turned into a defensive stance. You wouldn't be the anonymous player who is ranked 4th on the combat ranking, would you? No. Feng Bujue answered the question with indifference and walked forward. Shiva was not going to sit there and wait for death. The 6 stone plates opened fire, and 18 beams of light formed a large net that flew toward Feng Bujue. I'll show you something interesting, Feng Bujue said as he leaped toward the light. Several seconds later, there was a series of clanging sounds, and many bright light exploded around Feng Bujue. Shiva did not see his opponent's movement clearly. In his eyes, Brother Ju's arms that he used to block the attack were just shadows. Facing the 18 beams of light, Feng Bujue used some kind of skill and managed to create such a large number of light shadows. When the attack was completely neutralized, Shiva saw that Feng Bujue had a glowing death poker between his index and middle fingers. You used 2 cards to disperse the light from the heavenly hourglass? Shiva could not help but gasp. That doesn't make sense, Feng Bujue said. Actually, you can do that as well. In terms of speed, the current me is only 40% of your speed. Nonsense. Shiva did not believe that. It's normal that you don't believe me, but please imagine this. Feng Bujue smiled. Let's say the system can perfectly replicate this beam attack, and you have 10 chances to try what I did earlier. He paused for 2 seconds to give the man time to think. Do you think your chance of success will increase? Shiva was startled. 10 times is far from enough. Yes, 10 times is not enough, but what about 100 times? 1,000 times? Feng Bujue said. Theoretically speaking, as long as your physical condition can support you to complete this move, then after many attempts, there will be a successful example. That's because in the process of repeated trials, my proficiency in dealing with this set of attacks will increase. I will gradually remember the angle and timing of the light and get used to its speed. Even so, to succeed, you will need some luck. Shiva followed Brother Bujue's train of thought. But you've succeeded in one try. How do you explain that? First, you have to look at this from the perspective of probability. 0 means that nothing will happen. 1 means that something will happen, and when it's greater than 0 and less than 1, just like what I did earlier. Feng Bujue replied. Based on the principle of small probability, after a random event is repeated many times, as long as the probability is not 0, it will happen. He tapped his temple with a finger. What I did was just replaying the process of hundreds and thousands of attempts in my head. It's fine if you don't want to explain yourself, Shiva said. But the more you say, the more ridiculous it gets. You still don't get it? This kind of calculation only takes a moment. The human brain is incomparable to any computer in the world. Feng Bujue opened his arms and looked around. Don't forget, we're in a virtual world. He patted his chest. Our characters are just data. I also just realized, Thriller Paradise's photon computer is very unusual. This game has broken through some kind of limit, and it is different from other games that are connected to the nervous system. The system not only did not limit our brain, but it has the tendency to stimulate and develop it. You've watched too many movies, Shiva said. He did not mind chatting with the man because he was at a disadvantage. He could use this time to come up with a solution and wait for the stone plate's light to cool down. Sigh. Certain things, you can only rely on your own epiphany. No matter how others try to explain, they will not be able to teach you. Feng Bujue sighed. Let me put it this way. At this moment, the difference between you and me is not in terms of raw power, but in terms of level. Are you going to say, the world in your eyes is a green stream of data, and you can fly? Shiva mocked. This is just the beginning. Feng Bujue thought about it and replied seriously. Flying is just a matter of time. I suggest you go offline and do a mental evaluation. This time, Shiva really thought there was something wrong with the man's brain. There's no need for that. I just did it a few months ago. It's not a big problem. Feng Bujue replied immediately. He was telling the truth. When he was hospitalized due to a strange illness, he had checked all the available information at the hospital. Not a big problem. That means Shiva's terror points started to fluctuate again. I don't think it has anything to do with you. We're not that close, Feng Bujue said. You're the boss of Brahman, and you're trying to buy time with me? Where's your manners? He exposed the man's intention. Shiva replied angrily, then let's do it again. After all, his stone plate had cooled down again. Humph! How boring. Feng Bujue scoffed. His feet moved, and he charged forward. Now, Brother Ju could come up with the best set of moves in his mind before he moved. He could do it in the blink of an eye, and he could execute it with precision. Therefore, the attack of the light beam had become meaningless. In reality, Shiva's resistance was futile. If not for his advantage in speed and strength, as well as his rich fighting experience, he would have been defeated in less than 3 moves. Feng Bujue, who had gotten used to Soul's Eye, switched from defense to offense. With 2 cards in hand, he danced around like a knife. After 10 moves, his throat was sealed. In his shock, Shiva's life points dropped rapidly. After several more moves, he dissolved into white light and was killed out of the scenario. Chapter 294. War floated in the sky and looked down at Feng Bujue, who was several hundred meters away, and said, after Vincent's bet, this kid has also been enlightened. Do you think the outcome is already decided? Woody's creepy laughter came from beside him. War turned around to look at the man in the black suit with the glasses that always glowed white. Now, I finally understand why Vincent wanted to facilitate this killing game. You think he's helping me? Woody asked. Isn't that the case? War asked. He. That's where you're wrong. Sid is his disciple. If he wants to help him, he should help Sid choose the person. Woody smiled. Vincent knows very well that I don't need his help. His tone suddenly changed as he said in a low voice, moreover, at the end of the day, there can only be one winner in this gamble. If you help anyone, you might end up becoming a threat to yourself. You have a point there, War replied. But now that I hear it, I think we can use an Eastern proverb to describe it, taking advantage of others. He. Indeed, objectively speaking, Fong Bujue has gained a lot. Woody not only did not deny it, he even laughed like a flower. But that has nothing to do with Vincent. He paused. Vincent doesn't know that before this killing game started, Fong Bujue was only one step away from understanding Soul's Eye. Fong Bujue is a very talented person, but his intelligence has become a kind of restriction. In the previous scenarios, he rarely had the chance to experience true desperation and a life-and-death battle. Because he always used his intelligence to solve problems, he would often lower the difficulty of the battle or avoid it directly. If he could be like a fighting player and keep fighting things that are stronger than him, he might be able to understand Soul's Eye earlier than the person Vincent chose. So you're saying, the person I chose is not as smart as the kid you chose? War asked after hearing that. Since 7 Kills was a combat-type player, Woody's words were harsh to his ears. He. Isn't that obvious? Woody's smile became even more wretched. Not only the person you chose, all the other candidates, in terms of power of comprehension, cannot compare to Fong Bujue. He started to make enemies for his brother Ju. Fighting with a strong opponent and being pushed to the limit is the basic requirement to understand Soul's Eye. The people you chose are mostly fighting players, and each of them has experienced that many times. Furthermore, they have the support of fear. But Fong Bujue did not feel fear, and he crossed the line with his own will. If you want to make a fuss, then do it, War said. War said, my opinion hasn't changed. I don't think 7 Kills will lose to anyone other than Phantom Dawn in battle. He. In that case, we shall wait and see. Woody pushed on his glasses. Oh, by the way about Vincent's goal, I'll give you a hint, he said mysteriously. Sometimes, to win, you have to lose. War glanced at Woody again. He did not say anything, but he understood what the man meant. All right, John Doe, I don't know what happened between you travelers from another world, and I'm not interested. After Shiva dissolved into white light, the 3 superheroes surrounded Fong Bujue. It was the Angel of Death who spoke in his low voice. But you have to pay for what you've done. Fong Bujue glanced at his stamina points. He still had 1002800 left. He thought to himself, with the aid of Soul's Eye, I can control the stamina points required during combat. As long as I simplify the unnecessary actions, things that originally required 3 to 4 stamina points can now be done with 1 stamina point. But there are 3 of them now. Damien and Squire are not that strong. They are weaker than Shiva in terms of physical combat, but the Angel of Death, in terms of fighting, he might be stronger than the real Batman. Nightwing and Todd might not be his match. Furthermore, the 3 of them are the main characters of the comic. If my analysis is not wrong, in this kind of comic world, if you want to kill the main characters, you might be struck by lightning. This is not going to be easy. Fong Bujue could not help but say, 100 stamina points might not even be enough to escape. Suddenly, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of wind being cut rang out, and 3 black shadows flew at them from the night sky. The Squire and Damien did not have time to evade, and they were hit. Only the Angel of Death leaped to the side and barely avoided them. Bat darts? The 3 heroes were shocked. The bat darts had been modified. There was a rope between the darts, and they were shot out from a grappling gun. The principle was that the darts would fly past a person's side. After the rope touched the body, the darts would circle in 2 different directions and tie up a person in just 2 seconds. Damien and Squire weren't injured, but their torsos were tied together for the time being. Also, they were knocked down by the momentum and fell onto the street. This way, a man's voice came from the top of a building. Fong Bujue knew very well that the words were directed at him. He didn't know who it was, nor did he know if this was a trap, but he had no other choice. Damien and Squire would soon be able to break free of their restraints. He had no time to hesitate. Brother Ju quickly dashed into an alley beside him. It was no more than 3 meters wide. He jumped back and forth between the walls of 2 buildings and quickly reached the 6-story rooftop. The Angel of Death naturally chased after him. He knew that the other two kids could untie themselves without his help. Thus, the most important thing was to stall the target and not let this John Doe take the opportunity to escape. To his surprise, another two shadows came at him from the night sky. One was a bat dart, and the other was a smoke grenade. This time, the Angel of Death used his two swords to block the incoming projectiles. The bat darts were deflected by him, but the smoke bombs exploded the moment they came into contact with the flaming swords, enveloping him in the center of the smoke. When the Angel of Death rushed out of the white smoke, be it the John Doe or the ambusher hiding in the dark, they had all disappeared from his sight 15 minutes later on the rooftop of Wayne Building. You've watched too many crime movies. Do we have to fight here? Fong Buju asked. A man in a full bat suit stood across from him and said jokingly, "Sorry, I'm a police officer." Actually, 7 Kills was telling the truth. In the real world, he was a police officer. You are also a strange person. Fong Bujue continued. When I was fighting Shiva, you were already there, right? Ah, of course, the equipment I'm wearing is incredibly impressive, 7 Kills replied. He used his finger to point at his helmet. Just this helmet is equipped with night vision, thermal imaging, sonar, gas mask, mini radio receiver, and walkie-talkie system. With this, stealth, surveillance, and tracking are child's play. That's why I say you're strange, Fong Bujua said. Since you were already here, why didn't you ambush me when I was fighting Shiva? And why didn't you choose to stand by and watch after we were done? He asked. Regardless of the strategy, it would be more logical than coming here to fight me, right? 7 Kills smiled and gave a reason that sounded unbelievable to others. I'm a one-on-one fighter. Chapter 295. This is the first time I've heard of something like that. Fong Bujua's reaction was similar to Shiva's. You can understand it as. 7 Kills smiled. For me, the way I win is more important than the way I win. You want your opponent to admit defeat. Fong Bujua asked again. I only need to defeat myself. Whether my opponent admits defeat or not is not something I can decide, 7 Kills replied. Even so, this is just a game. Don't you think you're being too hard on yourself? No, this is very important, 7 Kills said seriously. In the real world, people will do anything to achieve their goal, and there is no bottom line. They bully the kind and fear the evil. They laugh at the poor, but not at the prostitutes. But here, everything is simple. He clenched his fist and raised it in front of his eyes. I can use force to carry out my faith and make those demons and monsters lose in shame. No wonder you're only ranked 15th on the combat stat ranking, Fong Bujua commented. This set of principles has caused you quite a bit of trouble. Humph. From your perspective, this is very stupid, 7 Kills said. No, I respect those who follow their principles, Fong Bujua said, even if I don't agree with their beliefs. He laughed. The word stupid is more suitable for people who have been brainwashed by other people's thoughts. Huh. 7 Kills also laughed, but he did not answer that. Instead, he changed the topic. By the way, when I was leaving the Bat Cave, I remembered something. Fong Bujua, you're Long Almin's friend, right? Yes, Fong Bujua answered. 7 Kills mentioning Brother Long's ID did not surprise Fong Bujua, because Brother Long had once said that the guild he joined was filled with colleagues, so it was normal for them to know each other. By the way, your company is actually a gaming studio, right? Fong Bujua asked. 7 Kills was startled. This was the first time he had been asked that question. Blades was already at the top of the 2 guild leaderboards in the game, and they never recruited players. Therefore, most players thought that they were a professional gaming studio. This was something that everyone agreed on, so no one would ask about it. 7 Kills let out 2 AS. One was the first, and the other was the fourth. Yes, of course we're a studio. Since 7 Kills did not know what Brother Dragon and Fong Bujua were talking about, he could only go along with what Fong Bujua said. After all, he couldn't tell the other party that they were a department arranged by the police in the game. After I leave the scenario, I'll have to report this problem as soon as possible. It would be best if I could come up with a suitable explanation, 7 Kills thought to himself. Since he was wearing the bat mask, Fong Bujue had a hard time reading anything from Seven Kill's expression, but when he heard the hesitation in the man's voice and combined it with Long Aomin's previous behavior, he thought, the people from this studio seem to be ashamed of being a professional gamer. None of them are willing to talk about their occupation. Looks like I'd better change the topic. About that, Fong Bujue said, you went to the Bat Cave and only got this set of clothes and a few pieces of equipment. Yes, I couldn't take anything else with me, Seven Kills admitted. Haven't you seen the Batmobile, the Bat motorcycle, the Bat plane, the Bat helicopter, the Bat boat, or the Bat jet ski? I saw them, but I don't know how to drive any of them. What a waste. Fong Bujue placed his hands in his pockets and paced back and forth. If it were me, I would have loaded everything I could onto the Bat plane and cruised in the air. After confirming your location, I would have set it to autopilot. Then I would have parachuted out and let the Bat plane carry the fuel air bomb to crash into you. So, that was your original plan, Seven Kills said. It was indeed an invincible plan. Unfortunately, that plan is no longer valid. Fong Bujue said, you and Shiva moved faster than I expected, and did the two of you come to some kind of agreement not to fight but to deal with me first? Seven Kills was startled before laughing. Ha 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 ha. He shook his head, and there was helplessness in his voice. Impressive, indeed impressive. You flatter me. Fong Bujue's words formed a great contrast to the smug expression on his face. At the start of the scenario, no one would have thought that you, who appeared to be the weakest, would be able to defeat the most difficult Shadow King, Seven Kills said. No one would have thought that you could defeat Shiva, who was ranked second on the combat stat ranking, on your own. He paused for 2 seconds before adding, after today's battle, you will definitely become famous. That might not be the case, Fong Bujue said. Shiva and Shadow King wouldn't go around telling everyone about their defeat, right? He pointed at Seven Kills. The only people left who know about this are you and me. If we don't say anything, nothing will change. Oh, Seven Kills was confused. There is no need for me to help you spread the news, but why don't you go on the forum to show off? Indeed, normally speaking, if a player who is not that famous managed to defeat one of the biggest characters in the game, they would want the whole world to know about it. I'm trying to keep a low profile, Fong Bujue replied calmly. Seven Kills laughed again. I really can't read you. Same here, Fong Bujue said. This is the first time I've encountered a so-called solo player. Seven Kills sighed. After chatting for so long, including the part where you escaped, your life points and stamina points should have recovered by now, right? Not yet. Fong Bujue glanced at the game menu. His life points were at 51%, and his stamina points were at 342,2800. But it should be enough for a solo battle. Are you sure? Seven Kills continued. What I'm wearing is a legendary batsuit. The stats of this set. Then take off your cape. Fong Bujue suddenly interrupted him. Cape? Seven Kills turned to look. Oh, speaking of which, I only realized that I was holding a broken one after I left the Batcave. At the time, he had just put on the batsuit and was shocked by the stats of the equipment. He was distracted, so when he took the cape, he randomly picked one from the row of glass cabinets. A broken batsuit won't harden into the shape of bat wings after charging the fiber. Its firepower will be greatly reduced, Fong Bujue said. I believe taking off this cape won't affect you too much, right? It won't matter. Seven Kills smiled and took off the cape. He tossed it to Fong Bujue. This equipment has no stats anymore. I'm only wearing it to maintain the overall appearance of Batman. If you need me to give in, I can give you the helmet. There's no need for that, Fong Bujue said. He accepted the cape and looked at the item description. Name, Battered Bat Cape. Item type, Armor, Rarity, Broken Defense Points, None Element, None Special Effect. None can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. A damaged, old cloak. Fong Bujue read the description and silently placed the item inside his inventory. Then he raised his head and said, Then let's do it. Chapter 296. Tat 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 tat. This is the Gotham Police. Put down your weapons and raise your hands in surrender. An officer with a loud voice poked his head out from inside the helicopter. He used a loudspeaker to yell at Fong Bujue and 7 kills. It had only been 5 minutes since they started the fight. In fact, as soon as they were chatting, someone came to disturb them. The area around Wayne Building was completely surrounded by police cars, and snipers were hidden on the rooftops of the surrounding buildings. Of course, since Wayne Building was the tallest building nearby, with the wind and darkness, unless Fong Bujue and 7 kills came down from the rooftop, the snipers were useless. The Gotham police called for 2 helicopters. They circled above the skyscraper with their searchlights on. It was as if the 2 visitors from another world were King Kong. Even though the 2 police helicopters were not equipped with heavy machine guns, each of them had a sniper with a rifle. Quite a number of heroes from the network were there as well. Nightwing, Damian, Catwoman, and so on. There were 6 to 7 of them. The other heroes could not all be there. After all, the streets of Gotham City were still filled with criminals. When the police force was weak, they needed to be more active. Do you have a plan, Captain? Nightwing walked to Captain Gordon's side. He did not greet him, but asked directly. Gordon was standing next to a police car. He was holding a pair of binoculars and a walkie-talkie. He was busy giving orders to the various units. When he saw Nightwing, he used his usual serious tone to reply. My people told me that Batman and the Joker are fighting up there. No, they are not, Nightwing said. I know because my people also said that these 2 monsters move so fast that you cannot see them clearly, and they can shatter concrete with their bare hands, Gordon replied. So, Nightwing wanted to hear more. I think we should let them finish the fight, and then we will deal with the one who survives. That is easier than dealing with both of them at the same time. Nightwing asked, does that mean one of them will die after the fight? Before he finished, there was an explosion on the rooftop, and the crowd below gasped. A concrete block at the edge of the rooftop shattered and fell straight to the bottom of the building. God! As Gordon exclaimed in surprise, he felt a strong and powerful arm wrap around him and drag him away from his original spot. A few seconds later, the concrete block landed on the roof of the police car next to Gordon. After a series of clanking sounds, the police car's buzzer and horn sounded together. When the dust settled, Gordon came back to his senses and realized that it was Nightwing who had dragged him away. He adjusted the glasses on the bridge of his nose and did not have the time to thank Nightwing for saving his life. He immediately shouted to the other side, someone turn off that damn siren. At the same time, check if anyone is injured. Nightwing stood behind him and looked up at the sky. All right, looks like these 2 fellows are serious. This fight will be a fight to the death. Impressive. 7 kills looked at the fist that he had thrown out and then glanced at the large piece of building that had been shattered. He could not help but sigh. When I first put on a batsuit, I only thought it was light and agile, and there were many special effects. But in actual combat, I realized what legendary equipment is. He turned around and looked at Fong Bujue, who had retreated 10 meters away. But, Brother Fong, who are you? You're able to fight me to a standstill under these conditions. That is so hurtful to my pride. Yes, I spent so much effort just to hurt your pride. Fong Bujue was obviously being sarcastic. Ha. Sorry. 7 kills heard the joke, and he replied, because I was having so much fun, I got carried away. Fong Bujue did not reply. He used the back of his hand to wipe away the blood on the corner of his lips and spat out bloody saliva. He calculated in his mind. Even though he is not in the top 10 on the combat ability ranking, in terms of fighting ability, he might be stronger than Shiva. Looks like he is the type that focuses on one mastery. Other than the general mastery that will definitely level up, only the fighting mastery is very high, and the rest are all below level E or even an A. Giving this kind of person the bat suit is like giving wings to a tiger. He is like a small fry, whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, there is the sound of light beams tearing through the air. This was from the low-powered freeze ray gun. Unfortunately, 7 kills only leaned slightly to the side and avoided Fong Bujue's 2 shots. The freeze ray gun brushed past the batsuit and only left a small trace of frost. Seven Kills patted it with his hand, and it disappeared. This kind of attack has no effect on my life points, Seven Kills said. Seven Kills said, unless you have a heavy weapon, you'd better work harder in close combat. Seven Kills was an honest person, and what he said was the truth. His personality would often be misunderstood by his opponents, and they would think that he was arrogant. Actually, he was just a person who enjoyed the process of battle and liked to speak his mind. That was all. Just how strong was the batsuit that Seven Kills was wearing? Before listing the specific attributes, I have to explain the few unique characteristics of the equipment. The difference between the batsuit and the cold-blooded armor was that the batsuit was not a piece of equipment. Instead, it was an amalgamation of many different pieces of equipment, and each of them could be used independently. 1. The batsuit helmet, made from anti-impact synthetic graphite, bulletproof fiber coating, basically immune to light weapon damage. The electronic system under the helmet had been explained by Seven Kills in the previous chapter, so it would not be repeated here. 2. The batsuit armor, Nomex fireproof fiber armor with carbon fiber reinforcement. It was practically invulnerable, and it provided limited defense against high-intensity shots from the front. The outer shell was covered in soft leather, and while it satisfied the defense, it was also very comfortable. There was also a temperature control system inside the armor to maintain the wearer's body temperature, so the wearer's muscles would not freeze during battle. The same function of the cold-blooded armor had a negative effect. 3. The batsuit arm guard and glove, made from the same material as the armor. The forearm was equipped with ejectable blades and buttons that could control parts of the helmet and vehicle. The glove had a very strong suction force, incomparable to the spiderweb glove, and it could help the wearer climb and move easily. 4. The batsuit leg guard and batsuit boots, equipped with strengthened fireproof knee guards and boots. Kevlar Nomex groin armor. There was a supersonic bat transmitter at the bottom of the boots, and it could eject blades for ice skating. Of the 4 pieces of equipment, the batsuit was perfect quality, and the other 3 were excellent quality. When all 4 were equipped, they would be considered as one, and they would become a piece of legendary equipment. Name: Batman's suit. Item type: armor quality, legendary defense points, extremely strong element, refraction, isolation, buffering special effect, inherits all the functions of the 4 batsuit armor and increases all the user's masteries by 1 level. Equip requirement: male, suitable body shape. Can be taken out of the scenario. No. Remark: I'm Batman. Of course, there were also the batsuit belt, cape, dart, and mini landmines. As accessories or consumables, they were not part of the set. Seven Kills fighting mastery was level B, and after putting on the batsuit, it was a scary level A. As mentioned before, the game's definition of a level A mastery was level A mastery. There was a chance to learn the skill of that mastery, and the success rate of activating the skill was 100%. Feng Bujue, on the other hand, had only raised his fighting mastery to level C during the battle with Shiva. If not for the support from Soul's Eye, he would have lost to 7 kills. I'm trying to come up with a solution. Feng Bujue's tone was calm, and there was no fear on his face. He merely narrowed his eyes and looked like he was about to die. However, Brother Ju's brain was turning at high speed, coming up with a solution. Other than death poker of the weapons I have, the wrench and stool can be used as cold weapons, but the effect won't be that good. Unless the enemy stands still and allows me to shoot at him, Miss Moxie's bad temper and freeze ray gun won't work. His helmet is much more advanced than my mask, and I can't rely on the poison from the goblin's gas mask. The only things that can break his defense are the anti-gravity gun and the 2 Mark II grenades. I haven't used the former yet, and the latter, it won't be that easy to make him suffer the explosion. The batsuit is really impenetrable. If the enemy is a normal player, I might have a chance, but this is a guy with super high fighting mastery. With that thought in mind, Feng Bujue glanced at the 2 helicopters in the sky and mumbled, TSK, a bunch of weaklings. They don't even have heavy machine guns. What's the point of coming here? He could only give up on the idea of getting weapons from the police. Whoosh! A bat dart came at him, and interrupted Feng Bujue's train of thought. But he did not move. He did not make any evasive movement. The bat dart flew out in an arc, and in the end, the wing of the dart brushed past Feng Bujue's neck and did not injure him at all. Oh, what is the meaning of this? Feng Bujue turned back to confirm. Is it going to come back? I'm just testing to see if you will dodge, 7 Kills said. Feng Bujue understood immediately. Oh, so that's how it is. You purposely threw a dart that looks like it will hit, but will actually miss to test my prediction ability? Yes. There was confusion in 7 Kills' eyes. Your prediction ability is so strong that it confuses me. Is it some kind of ability to predict the future? He paused and immediately denied this speculation. No, be it in the real world or the virtual world, there is no such ability. He scratched his chin and said darkly, but your accurate judgment of various attacks and your almost flawless response, what is it? Chapter 297. Can't I be naturally talented? Feng Bujue replied. Oh, I think it's more logical to explain it as some kind of permanent passive skill. 7 Kills shrugged. But if you don't want to talk about it, then so be it. He paused before continuing. Let's get back to the topic. I can see that unless I stand there and allow you to attack me, you won't be able to beat me. And the longer the battle drags on, the more disadvantageous it will be for you since you have less stamina points and life points. The result of a battle of attrition will be your defeat. He raised his head and asked, I believe you won't deny that, right? Uh-huh. Feng Bujue's lips twitched as he laughed drily. I hope your words come true. Ha! Don't misunderstand. I'm not advising you to quit. I can see that you are the kind of person who will not give up even when you see the coffin. 7 Kills laughed. I'm just suggesting that since you are not at the end of your rope yet, why don't you use your ultimate to fight me? As 7 Kills said that, he straightened his posture and started to move his arms like he was warming up. So, you mean you wish to win in a flashy way? Feng Bujue asked. Yes. 7 Kills actually admitted it. You played fighting games before, haven't you? When there is only one enemy left, and that enemy's HP is almost gone. Using an ultimate to finish him off is something that everyone would try. Under the bat helmet, he had an expression of relish. Under the admiring gazes of the surrounding players, my hands left the console, watching the character I controlled complete a sure kill in slow motion, and then the word "win" popped up on the screen. That feeling, okay, I get it now. Feng Bujue waved his hand to interrupt 7 Kills. You only need to say, I'm going to use my ultimate to send you out of the scenario. There's no need to give me such a specific example. Yes, that's what I mean, 7 Kills said. Of course, if you wish to continue this tug of war, I don't mind. No, Feng Bujue said, your suggestion is good. He threw caution to the wind and immediately swallowed a blood bottle. In fact, this was only the second bottle, an activated body enhancement technique. You like the Big Dipper magical fist style to determine victory, right? I'll accompany you to the end. At this moment, Feng Bujue knew very well that 7 Kills had already done everything he could. If it were anyone else, they would not have given him this last chance. The batsuit was almost invincible in close combat, and its excellent tracking function declared that running away was a meaningless action. In other words, as long as Chi-Sha took the initiative to drag the battle out, he would win without a doubt. But he didn't do that. He didn't want to fight to end that way. A respectable loser should lose heroically. A strong winner should win with magnanimity. Huh, good. 7 Kills replied loudly. His combat aura surged, and he was ready to use his skill. Then I won't hold back. Feng Bujue took out the Bell of Jin Gang and activated its fourth effect, double the effect of her next sorcery mastery, under reasonable conditions. Following that, he placed the Bell of Jin Gang into his shirt pocket, clenched his fists, and assumed the stance of a great horse. He then activated Take This with his bare hands. Naturally, he chose to specialize in spirit spells. At that moment, Feng Bujue was not holding a weapon because he did not know what kind of attack 7 Kills would use. In that situation, It would be easier for him to adapt to the situation if he used his bare hands. The other reason was based on his subjective opinion. If he wanted to get a random skill, using weapons like the wrench or the stool as a medium would not work. If he had a knife, sword, or whip, he might have a chance, but he had none of those. So he decided to use his bare hands. Okay, unknown energy is coming out of his body. What could it be? Feng Bujua mumbled. Magic beam cannon, energy slash, chi bullet. Any one of them should be able to turn the situation around. Here, Brother Ju had misunderstood the nature of energy wave. Actually, these three were considered fighting skills, and he had chosen the sorcery mastery, so they would not be activated. Even though I don't know what you're mumbling about, I'm going to make my move. Seeing that his opponent was ready, 7 Kills took a step forward excitedly. When he made his move, he did not forget to shout out the name of the skill. Heaven, horse, clang, star, fist. 7 Kills called this his ultimate skill because this skill was a consumable skill that could only be learned by grade B fighting mastery, and it could only be used once. In the anime, a young man who could not be killed used this skill to slay gods and demons. Now, it was used by 7 Kills, a player who did not know how to ignite the universe. Even though its power had been reduced, it was still not something that an ordinary person could withstand. From his actions, it could be seen that 7 Kills was quite certain of the strength of his opponent, Feng Bujue. To be able to fight on par with himself, who was wearing legendary-grade equipment, it would be hard to say if he did not use Comet Punch to kill such an opponent. On Feng Bujue's side, when he heard the name of his opponent's skill, his heart sank. In the face of this kind of attack, even Souls I would be useless. He gambled everything on the unknown skill in his hands. Comet Punch flew through the air, and a huge bluish-white object of light whizzed toward Feng Bujue. This punch was awe-inspiring, powerful, and imposing. It looked like Feng Bujue was about to die. At this moment, he still did not have a shred of fear. His mind was as clear as before. He raised his hands and pushed out. A dark, dark light dyed the sky, intimidating the world, shocking the sun and the moon. With the force of a whale, it roared out. Name: Void Flash Skill Card Property. Active skill: disappears after one use skill type. Sorcery effect: highly condenses the spiritual energy and emits a ray of light. Consumption: 100% of maximum spiritual energy learning requirement. Sorcery Mastery Serum Mark. This is a skill that can be used by greater voids or higher. Normally, it is red, but when a high-level user uses it, the color varies from person to person. Currently, Feng Bujue's Sorcery Mastery was level C, similar to Fighting Mastery. He had just leveled it up when he fought Shiva with Soul's Eye. In a battle of consumable skills against consumable skills, the level B Pegasus Comet Punch should be stronger, but Feng Bujue used the Bell of Jingang. Therefore, the power of this skill was multiplied. Once Void Flash appeared, it immediately suppressed the momentum of Comet Punch and slowly swallowed it. Before Feng Bujue could be happy for 2 seconds, 2 system notifications rang in his ears. The skill that you randomly activated, Void Flash, has exhausted all your current spiritual energy points. Overloading the skill will cause a loss of 30% of your stamina points. Your stamina points have been exhausted. The remaining loss will be deducted from your life points. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.